Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Penfield Zoning Board of Appeals. Tonight's meeting is going to take place in two parts. The first part will be our public hearings. We will ask the applicant to come up to that podium there and give us a name and address, and then explain to the board why the relief being requested should be granted. After the public hearings, we'll take a brief recess, and we will reconvene in the back of the room to deliberate on tonight's applications and take care of any other business that the board may have. Members of the public are certainly welcome at both the public hearings and the board deliberations, although the board deliberations are times generally for conversations amongst board members with staff, and occasionally with legal counsel. Tonight's agenda is fairly long. I don't want to say that to discourage people from staying, but I just say that because it is long. If you choose to leave or you have to leave, you can certainly call tomorrow and find out what action the board took on any particular item. We like to say every month that we think the town does a good job of notifying citizens that applications are going to be heard, specific applications, so that folks can come in and speak about the applications if they choose to do so. The town does that by sending postcards to people that live within a certain number of feet of the application. The town posts the agenda on the internet, posts it here, and also makes applicants, here at the town hall, also makes applicants put up signs similar to the for sale signs. We've all seen them. And that's just so people know that they have a right to come in there and speak about it. We think it helps us do our job as well. So with that being said, I'd ask everyone to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First application, please.
Jacqueline Griebel, Webster Montessori School, 1310 5 Mile Line Road, Webster, New York, 14580. Requests a special permit under section 250-10.3-A of the code to allow a larger freestanding sign than permitted under section 250-10.12-B1 of the code, with less setback than required under section 250-10.12-D of the code at 1310 5 Mile Line Road. The property is currently or formerly owned by Webster Montessori School and is zone R-1-20, SBL number 094.03-1-35, application number 19Z-0045.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Griebel. As discussed, I have some handouts. Can I pass these out?
Sure.
Sure.
I brought John Collins with me. He's a parent at the school and also a member of our Board of Trustees, and he's going to just help me as we walk through this. First of all, the packet that I passed out should reflect mostly what's up here as well. The first page is just a picture of the sign that we would like to put in the front portion of our building. I think I mentioned we'd like to put that perpendicular to the street so that it can be seen from both directions. When we got a little bit further into this project, we realized that the front portion of our property is pretty well covered with various easements and setbacks, both from the town of Penfield and the Monroe County Water Authority. So there's two diagrams in your packet, both of which are up here. One is the sort of site plan version, if you will, and one is my attempt to simplify that. In both cases, the town property line is just to the side of the sidewalk that runs along 5 Mile Line Road. Town code for signs is a 20-foot setback for signs, and that overlaps with the easement or the setback that Monroe County Water Authority needs for the water line that runs through the front of the property. So between the road and our bus loop or driveway, there isn't a space where a sign could be placed. So what we're looking to do is try to thread the needle and infringe a little bit on the setback from the town and also the easement that the Monroe County Water Authority needs. So that puts our sign just about 5 feet from the sidewalk into the front lawn. I've had verbal conversations with the Water Authority that they are comfortable with that placement if you are. So if you guys are good with that, then I go to them, and they have a assortment of paperwork that needs to be completed in order to do that as well.
And I think, as I recall, the water line is to the right, on the right side of that diagram, right? Correct. So you're trying to keep it far enough away so if they have to work on it, they won't have to interfere with the sign?
Exactly.
Okay. And there's also a swale in there, too, that kind of complicates things as well.
Yes, that's right next to what we call the bus loop. So there's, yeah.
So I know you have it there, but if you could add it together for me, what's the actual dimension from the roadway, the edge of the roadway to that sign?
Into the roadway, 17.5 feet.
That's, because I think you got a little additional there, too.
Roughly 27, if we're doing math
Okay.
right at this time of night.
Does the 17.5 include the little strip there where the
Yes, it
dotted
does.
line? Oh, so it does, okay. All right. So visually, it looks like it's almost 30 feet inside from the distance from the roadway.
From the road, yes. The property line is right, pretty close to the sidewalk itself.
Is there any problem with identification based on where the trees are? Because this looks like it's going to sit between two, I mean, you have a row of trees there.
Correct.
It is, but it's the best we can do. And the last 2 pages of your packet are actually photographs that we took recently, and a very tiny orangish-yellow representation of our sign, so you can get kind of a
Okay.
picture of what it would look like both northbound and southbound. I'm not going to say that's precisely placed, but it's pretty close. And
Yeah, so-
Crudely scaled.
crudely scaled. So from our perspective, given what we've got to work with, this we feel is sort of the best compromise for everybody involved.
And I guess technically it was the staff's determination that you needed to reapply for a variance for the sign, but you've already had an approval for the sign at, I believe, 4.5 by 6.1 feet, and you're now asking for 4 by 6. So that's even less than you had already approved.
Right. Yes, not only size, but the setback, is the piece I think is the new part of
Right.
all of this.
Yeah, because I think the original one was placed about the same, or no?
The original sign,
Yeah,
it sat, parallel to the road and was a little bit north of this placement.
okay,
The original sign was there before our addition was done about 6 years ago.
okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions from the board?
Is this going to be, I'm sorry, is this going to be lit?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience care to speak about this? All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
John Antetomaso, 8 Watersong Trail, Webster, New York, 14580. On behalf of Tri-Beauty Company, requests a conditional use permit under Section 250-13.3 and Section 250-5.5-C1G of the code to allow a hair salon studio at 1670 Empire Boulevard. The property is currently or formerly owned by Falone Family Associates LP and is zoned business non-retail. SBL number 093.19-1-45.18, application number 19Z-0046.
Good evening. My name is John Antetomaso, 8 Watersong Trail, Webster, New York. Here tonight on behalf of the owners of the property, Dr. Bob Falone and Falone Family Associates LP, and the proposed tenant, which is Tri-Beauty Company. Falone Family Associates owns the property located at 1670 Empire Boulevard, town of Penfield, known as Spring Pines, which I know you guys are familiar with. We're here tonight to present the following project for a zoning board's review. We're requesting a conditional use permit under Section 250-13.3 of the code to allow a hair studio at 1670 Empire Boulevard in our suite number 40. We have completed all necessary required forms for our presentation this evening, and also distributed copies of the photos in regard to subject site, which I just handed out to you, regarding its ingress and egress. Also an aerial photo, which I have on the board here. We, of course, feel that the proposed use is harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning district in which it is proposed. Several similar businesses exist in surrounding areas. we feel that the following use is not detrimental to the adjacent properties because of the following: the means of egress and ingress. I've had some photos of the main entry off of Empire Boulevard, which services Spring Pines Complex. Of course, we have two entrances, one on Plank Road and one on Empire Boulevard. The new turning lane is a plus to Empire Boulevard. As most of you know, I had a business on Empire Boulevard right there since about 1991. Every morning when you drive there and try to take a left into our place of business, I had to look in the rearview mirror and not stop until waiting to get hit from behind. So that turning lane is a huge improvement. There's also an entrance and exit, as I said, on Plank Road, which also services the project or the complex, and that of course helps for access out to that way. Once inside the project, we have off the interior road system, we have two means of egress and ingress into our subject property, which also allows for nice circulation there as well. The aerial photo that I've supplied here shows parking for 1670 Empire Boulevard. Spring Pines is of course owned by the Falone family, and there's a shared parking agreement throughout the park. They own 5 of the buildings that are in there. The other 2 at the end are individually owned. But the subject property that we're talking about tonight contains 42 parking spots for a total of 3 tenants. We have Genesee Valley Physical Therapy on the end of the building, Baby Moments, which has been there for a while, in the middle of the building, and now Tri Beauty Company is going to take the 2,500 square feet in the front of the building, which will be facing Empire Boulevard. We feel the addition, along with its customers and employees, will find that the existing 42 parking spots will accommodate the day-to-day occupancy of the businesses that exist there. We also feel that the addition of the business will add another plus to the overall success of Spring Pines. We have a nice mix of tenants in there, from dentists to doctors to Webster Fit Body Boot Camp to all the above, and we feel that this addition would be a nice complement as well. And we're about if we are successful with our application tonight, we're about 2 small tenants away from 100% occupancy finally in that building, or in the buildings. So we're happy about that. Compatibility with the general area in which it is to be located. We believe the intended use will be compatible with the general area. It will add to tenant mix when we feel it is very compatible. Type and amount of signage. We have had preliminary discussions with Andy in the town of Penfield, of course, and the sign company. We have been advised what we are allowed there, but tonight's application, we're not talking about the sign at this time. We need to finalize that, but the size requirements that we have found from the town, we feel will be adequate for their business, and they're happy with that. So we'll be back to talk to Andy a little bit more about that once we get a little bit more closer. Just to address potential noise level, we anticipate no excessive noise level that will impact the adjacent tenants, nor the general public in any way. In response to clear sight distance, this use, of course, is part of an already existing building, and we feel it will pose no issues with clear sight distance either into the complex or into the building parking areas. Existing or proposed buffering. The use is, of course, part of an already existing building, and landscape buffers and ponds are already in place with the original building, so we don't believe any other buffering is necessary. There's actually a pond in front. We have a gazebo already there, and this is right behind that. And proposed generation of any noxious odors. We have no odors as a result of the business that is being put in there. In talking with my client, more of the odors comes from nail salon, and they're not doing any nails there, so they'll just be doing hair and facials and things of that nature. Exterior lighting. Spring Pines has existing street lighting, as you know, as you come in the main road, and then we have at the door entries, they have a couple of outdoor lights on both sides or both entries to this property, along with all the other buildings in Spring Pines. I know you guys always are concerned with proposed hours of operation. I have the whole schedule here, so I'm going to read that to you. Sunday will be closed, Monday they'll be closed, Tuesday 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., Wednesdays 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., Thursdays 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., Friday 10 to 4, and Saturday 9 to 3. So that will be their hours of operation. They anticipate, as far as number of employees, there's 3 owners to the business, and they'll have 1 receptionist, and then they plan on probably, hopefully, leasing out a couple of rental chairs for additional hair salon or hairdressers, and they'll have a room for an esthetician as well. All clients that they service will be by appointment only. They're a very established team, and all of their appointments are by appointment only. They don't anticipate doing walk-in type things, but I'm sure they'll probably take a walk-in if they have it.
What, you keep looking at me when you're talking about customers.
Oh, I did not. I did not. I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Just for hair?
There you go. Thinking about doing facials for you, Dan.
Nails.
Okay, not detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working in the neighborhood. We feel that this use is the benefit of the town and to the surrounding neighborhoods and pose no negative impacts. We feel it is a value-added service to the Spring Pines complex in the town of Penfield. In addressing all those issues, we are and will continue to work hand in hand with Town of Penfield Building Department, also with Andy, to complete all necessary paperwork to move forward with completing our process to bring a wonderful new business to the Penfield marketplace. So I have a architectural plan from Greater Living Design that they have been working with that shows the 2,500 square feet with two accesses. These buildings also have a basement, but they're 10 cores, so it's not going to be used for anything other than maybe a little bit of storage. But when they built these in 1991, they had basements. So, and we're showing a whole new total renovation of the space. It's pretty wide open right now, but they're going to just knock down a couple walls, and I have this plan shows which one they're going to take out, and then we're just going to add some additional seating area, but they'll have the 10 chairs in place down the middle, and a very, very high class, very upgraded property from what's existing there. So thank you for your time. I'm here for questions.
Just a few. So for the parking, there are 3 tenants that share 42 parking spaces?
Correct.
Are any of the tenants allotted only a certain number of those 42, or is it like a first come, first serve?
It's right now it is a first come, first serve, and the adjoining buildings too are owned by Falone, and they have like a joint agreement. So if any overflow parking, we find it maybe in the other building, U of R is in, you might have some overflow there. Everybody kind of shares and
So
goes around.
that's a joint written agreement?
It's an agreement that verbally known between the tenants. I don't know if it's in writing.
Okay. Then there's 10 chairs.
Correct.
Are all 10 chairs going to be filled at the same time?
No, they won't be.
Okay. Do you have any idea about how many people would be working there at any given time?
Yeah, pretty much the way they schedule it, they're not all 3 of them there at the same time, they said, and also with the esthetician and stuff, they probably have a total of 5 or 6 as far as hair salon, or maybe a couple clients plus the hair salon, and then another person waiting in the reception area, and then filling the other chairs.
Okay. And so then there could be as many as 10 to 12 parking spaces used at any given time by the...
I would say yes.
Okay. But it's going to be open till 9 o'clock at night. I'm presuming there's going to be no parties thrown there, no live music, no alcohol served on the premises.
Nope.
By this company.
Nope.
That's all I got.
Anything else from the board? Anyone in the audience? Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Number 3 here. He was the guy that asked.
Yeah, the applicant number 3, make it back.
Okay.
Not yet, somebody said. Okay, let's go to 4, please.
Another pen over here.
Old Quarry Lane LLC, 444 Socorro Court, Reno, Nevada, 89511. Requests a conditional use permit under section 250-13.3 and section 250-5.1-E1K of the code to allow a private educational use at 100 Old Quarry Lane, 1538 Old Penfield Road, 1070-B Penfield Road, 479 Thomas Cove Road, and 523 Thomas Cove Road. The properties are currently or formerly owned by Old Quarry Lane LLC and are zoned R-1-20. SBL numbers 123.15-1-1, 123.19-1-22, 123.15-1-4, 123.11-1-79, and 123.11-1-76. Application number 19Z-0048.
Hi, I'm Richard Garth, Dick Garth. Got my address, and do I need to read that into the record? 35 Chadwick Drive, Rochester, New York, 14618. Good evening. Again, I'm Dick Garth. I represent Old Quarry Lane LLC, the owner of the Quarry property, as its real estate agent and property manager. Bob and Amy Tate, the principals behind the partnership, apologize that they couldn't attend personally tonight, but I expect they are watching tonight's meeting via live stream. They asked me to bring everyone up to date on the status of the quarry and introduce an exciting possibility for its future use. Bob and Amy care deeply about the property and have done a lot of heavy lifting already to clean up this former industrial site and have invested in infrastructure and landscaping. Since they have recently moved out of state to follow their grown children, they decided that they were not going to be able to further pursue their visions for the property and listed it for sale earlier this year. For reference, I have an aerial photo of the property here. The property is currently zoned R20, which permits residential zoning with minimum lot sizes of 20,000 square feet, or about half an acre. After eliminating acreage that is water, wetlands, or has steep slopes or setbacks, the engineers have determined that 121 home sites could be laid out conventionally on the site. Under clustered zoning provisions, these could be laid out in alternative configurations that would reduce infrastructure costs, leaving much of the land undisturbed. A sample layout with 121 clustered home sites is shown here for illustrative purposes. It is interesting to note that when the Tates bought the property in 2015, the town was proposing a rezoning to create the Manitou Lake Mixed-Use District, including up to 7-story construction and a total density for the site that could have resulted in over 900 housing units. At the request of the Tates, that zoning process was halted. Through the marketing process, we have learned that RIT is interested in becoming the next steward for some or all of this important property. The Tates are very excited about RIT's vision to make this 177-acre property with a 60-plus acre lake and nearly a mile of Aroniquoit Creek into a learning campus for environmental research and education, while preserving its natural resources for the enjoyment of generations to come. RIT's vision would not anticipate residential home development as currently zoned. Alternatively, educational use would be permissible under the current zoning upon granting of a conditional use permit. At this point, there is no agreement in place to transfer the property to RIT, and the property is still on the market for sale. However, one of the prerequisites for entering into any kind of binding agreement with RIT would be to obtain the necessary conditional use permit for educational use, and that is what we hope to accomplish tonight. I'd like to introduce Jim Waters, Senior Vice President of Finance and Administration for RIT, who will review their plans and vision for the quarry. I think you will all agree this would be an extraordinary opportunity for the entire Rochester region and for the Penfield community in particular. Thanks a lot. Jim?
Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I have the pleasure of representing the wonderful community of RIT. We are, as you know, preeminent private university here in the community. We currently have more than 19,000 students at RIT, and we have a wide variety of academic programs that would benefit from our acquisition of this site. We offer a BS, MS in environmental sciences. We have programs in environmental sustainability. We have a PhD program in sustainability. We have a BS program in public policy with a specific emphasis in sustainability and environmental sciences. There are a host of academic programs at the institution that would benefit from our acquisition and use of this wonderful, wonderful site. You know, it is one of those rare occasions where you have biodiversity of water assets, land assets, air assets, and wildlife. And we have researchers who are participating in research in all of those various areas. We've had some of the leadership of our College of Science over there. They would be probably the preeminent college at the university who would take advantage of this site. They have researchers who are doing things in invasive species studies of Western New York, understanding what it's doing to the vegetation that birds feed upon. We have people who really study migratory patterns of birds. There are lots of species of birds on this site. We do a lot of stuff with water, given the fact that there are two different types of water assets on the site, the lake and also the running of Arundecoy Creek. It provides great diversity for scientists to do that. We have a number of programs with K through 12 programs around the county. And it's difficult for us to find sites where you can take young students and show them and help them understand what researchers do today and what's the importance of the environment. We actually have researchers who are doing things in heat islands and the impact of having green spaces and water assets, which actually help to mitigate the heat impact of urban areas. We have people who are dealing with aquacultures and cultural, the land assets. You know, as you know, most of this is sandy soils. There will be opportunities for us to show and demonstrate how you can take brownfields and turn them into highly productive agricultural areas. We have people who are excited to do that. So it's really the thoughts of the university that we would take this asset and it would be an experimental classroom for many, many of our students and for many of our faculty. Right now, they have to travel to Montezuma's, nature lands out near Syracuse, or they use some assets at Mendon Pond Park. But there isn't an opportunity for them to set up and leave scientific equipment in the field to do empirical studies. And so this would provide us with that wonderful, wonderful opportunity. We know that down the road somewhere, there's probably a need for us to put in some classrooms and probably some wet labs. We haven't gotten to that stage yet. We know that we would come back with site, approval requirements when we finally understand what kinds of things would support our research the best. But this is kind of like the overview of how RIT can envision using the site. There is also a wonderful structure on the site that would be used as an event center for RIT. It wouldn't require us to modify any of the existing structure that's there. And it certainly is wonderfully done if you've ever seen it. The Tates did a fabulous job in building this center. And so you could see a board meeting there, you could see alumni events there, a host of events that could take place on that site. Parking would be easily accommodated immediately adjacent to it. But the institution really sees this as primarily mission-driven. This would be really central and an important composition for us as far as the totality of all the academic programs it serves. It's about 22 minutes from campus. And so highly accessible for students to come over with faculty and do their research. And I don't believe we would disturb the rifle club that's next door. So if there's anything I can help you with, I'd be more than pleased to share that.
So I have some questions here, and I'm sure the board members may have as well, and whoever wants to answer, it's fine by me. Can you describe for us how you get in and how you get out, and if there's any potential changes there in the future?
Currently, there's a gate on Old Penfield Road that's capable of remote operation, but it keeps it private. And there is a two-lane road going down to the event center that Jim
Can you point that out on?
Okay, well, this is an old aerial photo. This still shows where Dolomite had their cement plant.
Right.
So the current building is there. The road comes down, it's on this, it's the same road that Dolomite used to access their cement plant.
Okay.
But it's been upgraded and it's a 2-lane lighted drive in and out. In addition, looking, again, we don't have site plans, this is all, but there is a quite, it's gated now, it's fenced, but there's a second place where it seems like there used to be access down the hill off of Old Penfield into the lake at this point over here that could be, re-accessed to create a second means in and out, so that if, there'd be an event, you'd have a second means of getting emergency vehicles in, or if there were a classroom built down the road, there's room, there's an easy place to put a second means of ingress and egress in.
Okay, and is the intent that it remain a private road?
I believe, yes, the intent is it would remain private down the hill.
Okay, so then the user or the owner of the property would have the responsibility to
Correct.
maintain it and make sure,
Absolutely.
as you said, the emergency vehicles could get through there.
Right.
So no issue there.
And it was approved, for emergency vehicle access, et cetera, when it was built. And there is, a fire, I don't know what it's called, but a fire pump location that access, for the barn that's down there next to the barn now.
Okay. And would there be any plans now to create additional paved parking?
Paved parking?
Right.
That's part of the, I think, assessment that we would do.
Okay.
Right now, it's pretty much a compacted area.
There's a gravel lot there now that could fit probably about 100 cars.
All right, so that would suffice for whatever you're talking about at the present time.
Oh, in the short run, sure.
And there's also, the pavement is in pretty bad shape now, but there's the paved lot up on Old Penfield Road that's a part of this, where Dolomite used to park their cement trucks.
Right.
And that could be an additional parking area for this property. That's a part of the parcel.
And any intent now, presently, to put up any signs on the entrance roads, or would the signs maybe that you were talking about earlier all down near the land and near the buildings, or?
The only signs we have there now are no trespassing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, no, the institution at this point hasn't gotten to that point of thinking about the, signage required. We would be back to you with any kind of request that way.
Okay. And then, if I'm understanding you correctly, with where you are now and with your intent, that you're talking about using the land for the most purposes, and nature, if you will, for research and whatever the case may be.
And the lake.
And well, sure. And then the building that's there, also for meetings, conferences, whatever that, classrooms maybe in the future. But now, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's more, your plan is to use that, natural beauty down there to research.
Yeah, at this point in time, I would think if you were to prorate the usage of the entirety of the property, it's probably 85% academic, research, faculty, students, and probably 15% would be allocated towards the structure itself.
Okay.
And holding events, because, once this hits on the campus, there'll be, very much an interest from academic communities to come over and see it. And this facility gives the perfect opportunity for them to come in and have their meetings, explore the site, come back in, discuss what they've seen, talk about how they would lay out, research on this site, if down the road we need, it's just, it provides a wonderful gathering spot for the people who would ultimately be over there utilizing the facility from the research perspective.
I'm sorry.
No,
The current building is the access in and out is all on grade. There's no ADA issues. There's a handicap powder room on the first floor. So it's, for RIT's use to get people in and out of there, it's already ready to go.
And as you know, we have a litany of items that were, and you have discussed them in your written application, but some of them you've said you're not quite sure now what the answer is going to be, proposed hours of operation. And perhaps there'd be some research that's going to be done.
24 hours a
Well,
day.
right, or in the summer at 9 o'clock, maybe not so much in February, but maybe in February, what do I know? But I guess then what you're asking the board to do is to grant permission for the use that you've described, knowing that it's likely in the future there's going to be another application that comes in when you have either more specific concrete plans or an expansion in mind of some sort of the educational use.
Yeah, I think even looking longer term, I mean, the educational use I've described will pretty much be what drives our use of that site.
Sure.
And I'm sure there'll be people who study things during the evening hours or set up experiments and they need to come in and check them at certain hours to see what's going on, or, you know, the wildlife that they're studying to see the behaviors of certain species at night.
Or sit in a blind and watch nesting birds or,
Right.
or whatever.
But, you know, RIT is not going to create light pollution for any neighborhoods from its activities on that site. It's not going to be a noise generator from the scientific research that goes on there. That's just not, you know, what takes place within the kinds of things that we do.
Right. And you did mention one of the neighboring properties, the Conservation League, I think.
Right.
You know, the gun club. They've been there a long time. Well, and, you know, they I would think, would want to be able to continue to use their property in the way that they do it today. And so you wouldn't oppose language in any resolution that says that any of your use that interferes with their current use of the property is prohibited.
Look, we'll end up with a grant application to the federal government to study the hearing effects on birds from the gun range. I mean, researchers will find a way in which they'll take something like that and make it part of research as far as how does it impact the biodiversity of wildlife. I mean, we're creative when it comes to
It's quite amazing to see how the wildlife have adapted to the conservation.
Yeah.
You can go, you can stand over there and there's the deer just stand there while the guns blast away.
Wow.
The ducks don't move, the geese don't move, they all just...
Yeah, we're fully aware of the guns. We were there, you know, when it was in full session, and the researchers had, the faculty that we had there weren't bothered by it at all.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
What about safety and security? Monitoring the facility? I mean, this is a huge property that presumably a university is going to take over ownership of. Students are going to be going in and out of it at all hours of the day. Then there probably is going to be periods of time where it's going to sit where nobody goes to it. Have you thought about this at all, what your plan is to make sure that security gets there and that the students are safe when they're there and the property is safe when nobody else is there?
That's absolutely an excellent question. We've actually had the leadership of our public safety department. We have a fully staffed, fully professional public safety department on campus. They use all the latest technologies as far as monitoring things with cameras and detection devices. They've already been over there to study the plans. They know what they'll do in response to our acquisition of the property. Some of it will be certainly the use of lots of technology, but it will also have people on site.
We've had cameras there for about a year now, trying to increase the security, and it's worked quite well. But again, Jim's people came and looked at, they would upgrade the camera stuff that we have there, and we may even be looking, or our IT may be looking at, you know, in further application, creating better fencing to keep in terms of, because if they're going to have research experiments going on, they need to be secure, not just keeping the public secure, but keeping their research secure. So it may be that we come back for fencing variances or anything of that nature, but we take all that up with you down the road as those plans become more firm.
I thank you for your time, though. This is such a wonderful opportunity. I can't tell you the excitement on the campus among our faculty to be able to use this site.
I got a question. RIT's vision sounds like a great use for the property, but I'm a little bit uneasy about granting a conditional use to an organization that has no contractual ability to put that into effect. I mean, this is not the way it's usually done. Usually you put in an agreement to purchase. That agreement's contingent upon getting the approvals you need, including the conditional use permit. Any particular reason why we're doing this sort of backwards?
Well, I think it was just timing issues, taking advantage of your schedules. We're certainly having lots of discussions with the owners, so we think that this will come together really rapidly with this conditional use.
I would just add, it is a very complicated deal, and when we scheduled this hearing, there was an anticipation that there might be a firm contract. We're still working toward that, but it's not your average real estate deal.
Right,
And it's
obviously.
very complicated, and we don't have it in place yet, but when we scheduled this, we anticipated that we might.
Have the owners put something in writing giving RIT permission to make the application?
Yes.
I think that's-
Maybe with the material, I looked, I didn't see it there. That doesn't mean it's
Well,
not.
just following up on that, maybe, is it, I guess I also assume you wouldn't have any objection to an approval being specific to RIT?
Sure.
It would have to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think RIT would prefer that.
Well, yeah. But, sometimes
I think
talks
Bob
break
and-
down.
I think
No,
Bob
the
and
point
Amy
is-
would be fine with that, sure.
Oh, yeah.
The LLC would be fine with that.
Do you anticipate any additional structures being built?
Well, I mentioned at the outset that I think that...
Sorry if I missed
No,
it.
I think, no, I'm sorry. I think maybe I wasn't clear. I think that probably, after a year of being on the site and really understanding how we're going to use it, what kind of experiments will take place, what are the student uses that we'll see there? Are they going to include K through 12 kind of programs, which we do a lot of, and this will give us an opportunity to expand some of those programs for K through 12 kids? It'll help to define really what kind of facility needs to be there to best support those uses, and that's when we would develop a plan. I would anticipate, just knowing us and knowing the kinds of things that will take place, that somewhere down the road we would be back with a modest facility that would have some classrooms in it, probably a couple of wet research laboratories and comfort stations for students and a lunchroom and things like that. But it wouldn't be big, because we don't want to impact the nature and the natural beauty of the site by putting too much academic facilities in there at this point.
I think that was the thought process I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else from the board? Anyone in the audience care to speak about this? Come on up.
I just have a question.
Give us your name and address, please.
Hi, my name's Larry Brosser. I live at 53 Penn Lane, which is actually right down at the bottom of Old Penfield Road.
Okay.
So I take that road a lot. I want to say thank you, because for some reason it's been totally repaved. And I don't know what the influence is for that, but I'm very grateful for that. I was just curious about the infrastructure. So I know that infrastructure was put in to support that main building there. Would that infrastructure have to be changed to support the use that you're considering, adding the labs and holding? I'm mostly thinking about holding social events where you're going to maybe have 100 cars or whatever down there.
It's currently ready for that. I mean, the Tates had their daughter's wedding there for, a couple hundred people, and there's parking down, there's a gravel lot
I'm
down
talking
there.
about the sewer and
Okay,
water and all that.
Again, so the Tate's original
Better speak into the mic if you would, just because we're getting yelled at.
Tate's original plan was to build a sort of family compound there, and the current structure was to have been the barn. And it's a very nice barn, yes. But with the notion it would both be a barn, but also an event center which they would entertain, but also make it available to the community for events and that kind of thing. When they gave up on their family compound, they had to turn an ancillary structure into a primary structure, because you need one of those to have an ancillary structure. So the barn is currently a residence, as it's there. So again, what they brought down is we're trying to get this from the contractor, but a lot of power was brought into the site where the barn is. We don't know exactly how much. We're still trying to find that out from the contractor that did it. There was a sewer line there is a sewer main that bisects the property, and the Tates put a lot of infrastructure in to join the current barn and several other building sites to that sewer main. So there's sewer there for, I don't know, that would access 5 or 6 houses anyway, so I don't think there would be additional sewer work that would need to be done. There's an RG&E electric and gas on site to service, to quote the contractor, many houses. That's all I can tell you about how much there is now, but we're trying to do the research to ascertain how much.
And we could put a condition in there that it be confirmed by the town engineer that it be
Right.
sufficient for the use,
Right.
all utilities.
But again, I think utilities, water, power, sewer are taken care of for anything RIT would want to do.
Good question. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Bill Witt. My wife Pat Maurer. We live at 503 Thomas Cove Road. We have a couple of questions we'd like to ask. The first one is concerning the 2 parcels that are across the creek adjacent to our Thomas Cove properties. There really is, for people that are not familiar with the area, the creek kind of goes around the vast majority of the Quarry property. And these 2 parcels are separated by the creek, so there really isn't any access to them unless you want to wade across or take a canoe across. But we're interested in whether there's any plan of any sort for this area on the other side of the creek. And also, I know you mentioned that depending on what they're doing in terms of their research, they may want to cordon off areas, fence off areas to keep the public out of those areas. We've lived there for over 30 years, and so we know there's a fair amount of traffic on our side of the creek in terms of fishermen that come along. It's a very popular fishing area through there. Pretty good steelhead salmon runs go up through there. So there are quite a few people that I know use that recreationally. Kayakers, canoeists that come down the creek, and I'm wondering whether there's any plan to cordon off areas or fence off areas that would prevent people from coming down. I realize it's private, most of it is all private property along there, but through the years that this property that's been used by fishermen and, as I said, people that use the creek along there. So that was another question that I have. And I don't know, Pat, whether you have any other questions?
No, it's the same. Are there any intended uses for the properties coming into Thomas Cove? I think also there's a property going into Blossom Road, too.
Right, okay, so the property on Blossom Road, there's a strip there with 3 houses on it.
Right.
And those houses, the Tates bought that 5-acre piece and separated off the 3 houses those belong to the previous owner. So there is a little bit of Blossom Road frontage that goes with this piece. So what you're talking about, Thomas Cove,
which follows the creek.
Yes.
Essentially around.
This is all.
Here's Thomas Cove
Right.
Road here. And, okay, so here's the creek. The Tates, you can see, they've drawn in of the 100, again, this is not what we're proposing to do, but this shows what could be done. A lot there and a building lot there that would use Thomas Cove as its ingress and egress to get to those 2 building lots.
Yeah.
So the Tates the LLC may retain the property on that side, on the Thomas Cove side of the creek, with the notion that down the road, it may be possible to build 2 houses there.
But at this time, RIT has no intended use for any of the other side of the creek?
Yeah, our understanding is at this point that the Tates are more than likely going to retain that.
Again, the current negotiating place is that the Tates are going to retain the property on the Thomas Cove side of the creek.
Okay.
And again, just so it's understood, the Tates do own both sides of the creek and the bottom. So to define that, the fishing that's gone on in the creek is outside, out of bounds in some ways. Canoeing and kayaking is not. People can navigate the creek all they want. And we haven't really tried to stop any fly fishing except for people that come on the other side.
It's been our understanding that the state owns like a 10-foot right-of-way along the creek,
I don't believe that's true, no.
because they have their posts up that say New York State.
Yeah, and folks, I'm sorry, but please remember we need to use the mic.
The state, we thought, has a right-of-way on the side of the creek. I think it's 10 feet. They have cement posts up because that's the old sewer interceptor there.
Oh, there is a sewer easement, yes.
Yes,
But there
okay.
isn't, so to access the sewer, I misunderstood.
Yeah, okay, so a lot of people use that area for hiking, and that's really, I guess, state land. Is it state land, or is it?
No, it's not, there's no
It's just
access.
an easement.
There's no access there there's not an easement for hiking or
Okay.
fishing or anything. And so that, and again, there are dirt bikers there too that we've chased
We
away.
know, we know. Okay. Well, that helps, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, thank you all very much.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Bennett.
Come
I'm
on
an
up
attorney
there,
with Bond,
Kathy.
Shenick & King. We represent RIT. So I just wanted to clarify one of the points that was made. You had asked, whether the owner authorized RIT to make the application. The owner is actually making the application, and RIT is here to support that application as the, most likely potential future end user of that application.
Okay. Again, I think that any permission granted would be contingent upon it being
Right,
RIT.
and that's great, but I did just want to make sure I clarified that.
Otherwise, we'd have to give the Tates a conditional use permit to use it as an educational facility?
Right.
I mean, that
Yeah.
doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right, so, but I mean, it could be contingent on that end user being RIT, and that's what I would
Right,
anticipate.
because that's all we've heard from tonight in terms
Right.
of specific use, so.
Yes, correct.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Number 3 walked in.
Was he here?
Number 3's here.
William and Janine Wilkinson, 10 Smith Road, Webster, New York, 14580. Request an area variance under Section 250-14.3 of the code to allow an addition with less side setback than required under Section 250-5.7-D3 of the code at 10 Smith Road. Property is currently or formerly owned by William and Janine Wilkinson and is zoned general business, SBL number 093.15-1-69, application number 19Z-0047.
My name is Ross Morelli. I represent 5 Star Improvements, the contractor that's been contracted to help out with Bill and Wilkinson, the addition here. So the proposed plan is, I have the architect's plans, which do you guys have? Were they submitted to you? Or do you need?
Yes.
Okay, so I have the proposed plans, which is a 3-season room. That's going to be a stick-built room, so it'll be a footer on block, no crawl space, and an A-frame roof. Currently, the setback from the neighbors, what's proposed is 8.72 feet, which is what's in question here. There was an existing deck with the same dimensions, and we are going to be building the room with the same dimensions as it stands. We are going to be tying into the existing roof, and the outside shell will be consistent with the rest of the home with vinyl siding and vinyl windows and the asphalt roof. This is the aerial view. This is the side. This is the existing deck here. And the addition is going to be in that exact same area with relatively the same square footage and size. So the setback will stay
Can you
consistent.
just do that again? Because the camera just zoomed in on the picture, so if,
Right here?
Yeah.
This is the existing deck right here. Okay, the addition is going in that exact same area, so the deck has actually since been removed, and then the dimensions will be relatively the same with the same setback from this neighbor, the property line, which is roughly just under 9 feet. And that is it.
that's it?
Yeah.
Andy, so there was a previous variance given for this property?
Yes.
Can you just describe what that is?
Well, because the property is actually zoned general business, and we have a residence on the property, the general business district has greater setback requirements. So because of the zoning, they required several variances for setbacks, which were all granted. Front setbacks, side setbacks.
Was that variance for the deck, or was the variance for the house and the deck?
It was for, I believe they received a front setback for the house and a side setback for the house. I don't believe it specifically included the deck. There were also setbacks granted for the detached garage.
Was there a permit issued for the deck?
That I don't know. I'm not sure how old the deck is.
The deck's been ripped out?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, deck was there when we bought the house.
And you are at 10 Smith Road. Have you spoken to the people who own 16 Smith Road?
Yes, they all.
Can you come up and give us your
Sure.
name? Sorry.
Sure, they all said they would give a letter.
You're the owner? Give us your name and address.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know
Bill
it's-
Wilkinson, my wife Janine Wilkinson.
Okay.
Our problem was, we thought we were very wise when we were younger. We would get a small house and it'd be just right for us when we got older. We raised 5 kids there. We didn't think about grandkids. And so grandkids, when we have family together, we lack room. It's under 1,000 square feet, the regular house. So we thought that this would be something nice for us to do, give us more room when we have the family around. Rather than move somewhere else, we decided we'll go this route if it works out. So anyway, any of your other questions?
16 Smith Road. How do they feel about it?
They were willing to give us a letter, but we came here, they said the letter wouldn't do any good. We had to go through the process of having the meeting. So they were all willing to give a letter that they don't have any objections at all. We all get along real well, and everybody's been there quite a bit of time.
And how many square feet will the addition be?
The square footage is, it's 30 by 18 feet, whatever that comes to.
Yeah. The exact measurements are 24/8 by 19.
About 465 square
Right.
feet.
Thank you. Well, so you're adding 50% onto your house about?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The roof line of the addition is not going to go above the roof line of the deck, I see, right? Or of the house?
No, it is not. If, want me to put it up here?
Sure.
So this is the rear elevation. This is the proposed roof line, and then this is the original roof line that's right above it. So it will be below the existing roof line.
I have nothing further.
Anything else from the board? Anyone in the audience care to speak about this? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Application number 5 on the agenda was withdrawn. T.Y. Lin International, 255 East Avenue, Rochester, New York, 14604. On behalf of Pierre Heroux, Simply Crepes, request area variances under section 250-14.3 of the code. to allow a pergola patio outdoor seating area with less front and side setback than required under Section 250-5.6-D3 of the code, and a platform landing with less side and rear setback than required under Section 250-5.6-D3 of the code at 1229 Bay Road. The property is currently or formerly owned by Cienciana Property Management, LLC, and is zoned limited business, SBL number 093.11-1-39, application number 19Z-0050.
Hi. Good evening. I'm Randy Bebout with TY Lin. With me tonight is Pierre Haru, owner of Simply Crepes, and Sue Kim, the realtor for the property. As Andy mentioned, we're here tonight requesting 4 additional variances. You may recall that we were in front of you 1 month ago, requested variances for parking, lot coverage, and buffer, which were granted by this board. Last week, we were successful at the planning board with our site plan approval. So we're here tonight, sort of the last step of the approvals to get this project moving forward. Me and Andy just, in the building department, had some back and forth, and these just didn't get into the original application, thus we're here for a second time. I'll just go through them quickly. The first variance is for the front setback for the patio / pergola. This is just a nice feature that Pierre would like to have as part of his business. It just makes it a little more enticing. You know, we can take advantage of our summer weather. I submitted the elevation that shows the pergola, very nicely done. And I would just mention that this site had previous variances back in 2001, which granted relief from the front setback of 80 feet to, I think it was approximately 56 feet. So we're just reducing that further. The second variance is the side setback to that pergola. 20 foot is required. We're proposing 18.5. And you might say, well, geez, can't you just shift it over 1.5 feet? We could, but it just sort of balances nicely on the front of the building. The way it's, the spacing of the pergola sort of works with the windows. And I initially had shifted it over, and then when I reviewed it with Pierre, it really just makes sense to have it centered, and it'll look much nicer. The third one, well, actually, the last 2 variances are related to the platform. So the back of the building, the doors, the first floor sits up in the air. So we have to construct a wood platform to access that rear door. He's designed the floor plan, and we'll have 2 rear doors on the back, and that location of that door really works well with his floor plan versus, again, sort of shifting that over and compromising the kitchen, the storage area. It's a fairly minor request, and none of these, we answered the factors to consider on granting the variances. None of these really have any negative impact to the neighbors or the public corridor. You can't see the platforms. So with that, I will answer any questions that the board may have.
Can you just briefly describe the thought process for putting these in the specific location that they are, sort of going to the issue of could you put them somewhere else without the need for all the variances?
So the pergola, I mean, the front of the site is really the only place we could put that. We don't have enough width on the side of the building with the town requirement for a 7-foot sidewalk, and then having some landscaping. And if we tried to put the pergola on the side, I mean, we would have cars pulling right up to the face of that pergola. Not a safe situation. And then we wouldn't really have a walkway, if you will, to get around the pergola. You'd actually have to walk through the pergola. And then again, just talking about, you know, looking at the elevation that we've centered that on the building. And I'm just myself, I'm a person of balance. You look at something, and if that was all set, it's just going to look, it could look a little awkward. And then the platforms, I apologize, I don't have a floor plan with me, but Pierre and his architect, Dave Hanlon, have worked very hard to get that floor plan to work. Of course, the front half, 2/3 is dining, the back half is kitchen. the northern half, if you will, is really the main kitchen area. So that door, the platform that we're talking about, leads into the storage area. And, you know, shifting it, if we, well, it would be near impossible to make that compliant with the rear setback requirement of 30 feet. You know, that 30-foot line is here, that door would have to be right here, and that doesn't work with the equipment along the rear wall. So we would not be able to achieve the rear setback, the side setback of 3 feet. Again, could we achieve it? Yeah, we would. It would compromise our floor plan slightly. It just works really well where it's located. And again, we don't believe that whether this is here or it's another 2.5 feet away has any negative impact on the adjacent property.
Yeah, okay. So why do you need these additions, let's call them? Or why do you want them, I should say?
The platforms?
Yeah, well, everything. Everything
Again, when the back of the building, the doors are all, currently there's a deck there. I think, I don't recall if there's 1 or 2 doors, but I know there's an existing door here, so there's a deck there. So we have to have a platform to access the rear of the building, because the product will be coming, you know, any food deliveries will be coming through this back areaway. And ideally, we don't want to bring that product through the kitchen door, through that operation. We want to put it into the storage area, not to interrupt that operation. That's the reason that we're requesting the 2 doors and the platform.
Okay. And then the other structure?
Well, we're just talking about our variances are related to the pergola and the...
And that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as why we...
Yeah, what are you going to use it for? I mean, I'm not a trick question, I'm just...
okay, so
you know,
it's...
You were here last month, we didn't hear about it, and that's fine. Now we're hearing about it, so tell us a little bit about what you plan to use it for.
Again, the idea here is to have the outdoor seating. That he has found that very beneficial as a part of his business, and to really make that a more attractive, it would be more ideal to have the pergola there. Now, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, whether we have the pergola or not, we still need a variance for that, to have the seating there. So adding the pergola doesn't change the variance request. Is what was my understanding.
The variance for what?
This front setback variance. The patio in itself, it was my understanding that whether we had the pergola or didn't, we still needed that variance.
That's correct. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. So it's a aesthetic thing, a
Yes.
stylish thing? Okay. I
Yes.
mean, that's all again, it's not a trick question. I mean, it certainly looks nice.
Yeah, and it'll provide some shade, you know, people sitting out there, and we have it nicely landscaped in front of the pergola along this area in here, which is on the approved site plan.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
How many people will be able to sit outside?
We have approximately seating for, and this is a graphic, I mean, currently we're showing seating for 16. It may be 12, it may be 16.
Does that change your parking?
It does not, and the reason it doesn't is because what we had talked with the building department about is, and what we responded, because it was one of the questions of our PRC comments, was that when the outdoor seating is being utilized, he is going to rope off the what is referred to on the floor plan as the private dining area. So back in about this part of the restaurant, there's an elevated dining area, and I think that had 18 seats in it. So the intent is to rope that off while that's being in use. And his experience is, if he has a patio and it's a nice day, people want to be outside. They don't want to sit inside.
Right.
So that's how we're handling that.
Thank you.
That was my question.
Okay, well, that could certainly be a condition. Anything else from the board? Anyone in the audience care to speak about this? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Samperi, 22 Harvest Walk, Webster, New York, 14580. Requests an area variance under section 250-14.3 of the code to allow an outdoor kitchen patio pergola with less side setback than required under Section 250-5.1-F1 of the code at 22 Harvest Walk. The property is currently or formerly owned by Michael Samperi and is zoned R-1-20, SBL number 094.01-4-18, application number 19Z-0051.
Hello, I'm Michael Samperi. I live at 22 Harvest Walk. I must apologize. I feel like I'm out of my league here. I don't really know what I'm doing. We bought the house. It already had the pool, the existing pool. We finished off all the stone with a patio. I didn't know, to be honest with you, about codes and variances. I thought anything, because the fence was already existing, I thought anything that's in your yard, you're allowed to use. So once we had the patio down, we built this outdoor kitchen, which is just a granite countertop and made out of block with a grill and a pizza oven. Our backyard has no trees, so when the sun sets, it comes down right on our outdoor kitchen, which during the summertime, when you would want to use the kitchen, it makes it unusable. So again, not knowing about variances and codes, I thought I could just build a pergola type structure. It doesn't have any walls. I'm just trying to build something for shade, because what we've used all summer is the pop-up tents, and they look, in my opinion, kind of cheesy. So I wanted to build something nice. The picture of it's basically, it's just a outdoor structure, right? So again, making the mistake, I started building it, and then that's when I got a notice that I'm not allowed to do it. So trying to go through the right steps. I apologize for not taking them in the first place. I just didn't know any better. So.
Okay, so thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah.
Are you building this on your own? Do you have a contractor?
No, me and some friends.
Okay.
We're putting it up.
Okay. Can you, so what the concern is, I think, is the setback, because you're right up against your neighbor's property. There's a reason we have a setback, for aesthetic reasons as well. And it's also a very high structure. What are the dimensions of the pergola?
The roof, or the
How high
height
does
is
it-
9 feet, the height.
Okay, to the top of it.
To the roof, I believe that was about 12 feet.
Yeah, because that's higher than 9 feet.
The bottom part was going to be 9 feet, the top was going to be about 12, once it makes a peak.
And how's that going to be covered?
Shingles.
So it's not really a pergola, it's really a,
I don't know what to call it. It's
Yeah, a
I mean, there's
pergola-
no- I don't want no walls to it. This isn't probably called a pergola then.
like a gazebo. Yeah, it's definitely not a pergola because you actually have a roof to it, so it's not open. Now, why did you place it there and not somewhere else on your property? Because you have quite a bit of lawn to the left of the pool.
Well, again, you don't want anything in you're not going to put an outdoor kitchen in your lawn. The use area is your pool area. This is just, we let our kids play. So the amount of money that was spent on the patio and then the kitchen, I probably have $25,000 invested.
Yeah.
And now I have $25,000 invested in something I can't use.
Well, if you, could you lower the pergola at all? I shouldn't really call it that. It's really a
Well, yeah,
a pavilion, I guess, as Mike said.
Well, yeah, I was just trying to do it that it's gonna look right, you know what I mean? I don't think you want something too short. I mean, if 9 feet was too high, I don't know if there's limits, I could lower it. I mean, obviously, we're not that far into it, so whatever's done could come down. Again, I want to follow the rules, I just didn't know what they were.
Yeah. So the setback is, I think, 10 feet from the side property line, and you're right up against it. You would need a pretty significant variance of about 9.5 feet if I read the application correctly. Have you talked to your neighbor?
If I talk to them, not really, to be honest with you. They don't really come out of their house.
Because it's right next to them, so
Right, well, it's also a tree that they have that's about 4 feet over my fence that I have to cut every time. I mean, that tree comes into our yard, so it's not really blocking anything because you can't even see their house.
It's pretty standard when we look at these applications to ask what the neighbors think. You
Right,
know,
I mean, again, they keep to themselves. You know, I'm friendly with them, we wave, but they don't come out of their house. Every other neighbor, I mean, I could have had them sign something, they all would. The other neighbors that drive by, they would see it from the street, don't have any issues again.
Yeah, you can see it from the street. It's very
I said that
obvious.
the other neighbors that you can see it from the street don't have an issue. I mean, again, it's not going to be an eyesore, it's going to be a finished roof structure.
What would happen if you don't get the variance?
Honestly, I'd probably move.
Really?
Yeah. Because I can't use the kitchen. I mean,
Well, you could put a tent there like you had been.
I don't want to put a $100 pop-up
Umbrellas.
tent over a $25,000 patio and outdoor kitchen.
So, well, let me just talk about some of the standards that we have to use. We have to apply about 5 different standards. One is this going to create an undesirable change? Could you have achieved this in another way? And really, it could be moved, the kitchen.
Well, to where?
Well, it could have been built in a spot
Yeah.
originally with the variance need in mind, I guess is what the
Well, the
point
other
is.
side, I mean, I have just another picture here. I mean, the other side, there's nowhere to put it around the back side of the pool.
You could
Or-
extend it, the fencing out, right?
Could extend what?
You could push out and
No,
build
this
it.
is the same fence. This is the same fence. See, it goes back. There's no room on that side. There's no room behind. And then there was no room on this side.
What if you took down the fence, that part of the fence?
Well, again, you're incurring a lot of cost, and that fence it separates the yard because we have little kids, and I don't want the little kids going in the pool. So that's what the fence is for.
So the other thing is we also have to take into consideration whether the variance is substantial. And it's a very substantial variance. It's about 9.5 feet, okay? And whether it was self-created. So, you know, I'm just kind of struggling with, there's a lot you're asking for.
I mean, again, to me, I don't understand because it's my property, it's our yard. We're doing something that,
Well,
I mean-
and you can do things in your yard, provided that you meet the code. The code is there for a reason, so that you don't encroach upon, you know, be too close to your neighbor or something like that.
which I mean, again,
Or if that is
but we're not on
visible
top
from
of
the
their house,
street.
And we're not, you're talking about putting something against a tree that you can't see any of their backyard.
It's near their property line, though.
Right, but I'm saying you can't see it. They would never see it.
Actually, you can see it from that. You can see the top of the structure from the road.
From the road, from their house, I'm saying. From their house, you cannot see it.
It doesn't quite work like that, unfortunately.
I guess I just don't understand.
That was all the questions I had.
Are you aware that the town received a call from, and I'm reading from a roll here, received a call from a neighbor as to a monstrosity being built in the neighborhood? Do you know that some neighbor apparently used that term to describe this? Okay,
No, we're not.
Person's not identified here, but I'm sure that staff wouldn't have put that word in there unless it was the word used by the neighbor. So, you know, what we, the board, are stuck with now, frankly, and it's going to sound like I'm criticizing you, and I am in a way, but I don't mean it personally. But you've put together a beautiful property. It looks great, it looks nice. But now, you're asking for mostly after the fact, like you said, it could come down. But you've also said you would move if it's not granted, which is, pretty,
Also self-created.
yeah, pretty drastic action, but your choice. But there's no question that the structure, whatever we're calling it, is pretty large and is visible from some areas. But without question, the variance that you're asking for is, you're supposed to be 10 feet from the line and you're proposing to be half a foot from the line. So it's very substantial variance. And honestly, had you come in asking for this before you built it, before you built anything, I don't know what the likelihood of it being granted was. Not great, in my opinion, to be honest with you. What would it, any idea what it would cost to move the outdoor kitchen to an area where you could cover it without the need for a variance?
I mean,
I'm not locking you in, just a ballpark figure.
I know, the patio was $10,000. And the kitchen was another $10,000 plus material of the oven. So if I had to move a fence, I'd have to incur a cost of moving a fence, probably at least another $10,000 to $15,000 in patio, and then have it rebuilt. So again, I'm not trying to be a goof when I said I moved, but I don't have that kind of money, and I would just
it's just
chalk it up
drastic,
to a
but I get
loss.
it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, another consideration, one of the reasons we have side setback variances, rear setback variances, is to allow a buffer for fire safety. And you not only have violated that, but you're putting an oven, a grill, things that are combustible or potentially combustible, which is 10 feet closer to your neighbor's house and the tree, and, than it has to be.
Yeah, sheds are a perfect example of that. Everybody wants to put the shed in the corner of their property because they want to use their yard. But there are setback requirements for sheds, and one of the reasons for it is exactly what Mike just said. If you had 4 sheds from 4 lots all together in a corner, and one of them starts on fire, they're all going to start on fire. Plus, you have to be able to maintain them. I mean, you're going to leave yourself half a foot to be able to maintain that. You can't go on your, well, not without permission, go on a neighbor's property to maintain your structure. That's an issue too.
So our concern is that you're endangering your neighbor as well by having something combustible so close to that house.
You're also looking at a situation, I didn't see anything close to that in the neighborhood, and I doubt that I will. It's definitely visible from the street. It's not attractive, it's massive, and you're going to put more material on top of it. It's totally out of character with the neighborhood, as far as I can see.
Pergolas, again, I could change.
It's not a pergola. Where it's located and the size of it, it's 12 feet high.
Pergolas all throughout the neighborhood.
Really?
Right, so I could change the roofing structure if you wanted. I can make it flat. I just need shade.
There's other ways of getting shade. Like I said, umbrellas are a good example. Tables with umbrellas on it. You don't have to go 12 feet high to get shade with a massive structure, a wooden structure with shingles on it. That sticks 8 feet over your fence line.
In addition to the structure, Andy, does the kitchen also, outdoor kitchen, have to fall within a 10-foot setback as well?
Yeah, the kitchen and patio would as well, yeah.
Okay, so it's not just a setback for the structure, it's a setback for the kitchen as well?
Yes.
Okay.
How long has the kitchen been there?
Probably 5 years.
Okay. And same for the patio?
Yeah.
Would you like to do some research? We could table this application if you want to look into how much or what it would take to move the kitchen or the
I can't
structure.
move it. Those things are, there's quite a bit of work that goes into putting in a kitchen that has granite countertops, thousands of pounds. I mean, that thing's dug in 2 feet into the ground. I mean, again, I have, just in the kitchen and this, I have, like I said, over $20,000.
And I understand, I feel for you, I really do, I really do. And just trying to take into account, you know, everything, and making sure that basically everyone is safe too.
I mean, it's been there over 5 years. It's never been an issue.
The kitchen and the patio.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't have any other questions, but did you have anything else to add?
Nope, I was just going to ask if anybody had any more questions. Anybody in the audience care to speak about this? No. Okay. All right, thank you.
BME Associates, 10 Liftbridge Lane East, Fairport, New York, 14450. On behalf of 777 Panorama Properties LLC, request area variance under section 250-14.3 of the code to allow a building with less buffer than required under section 250-7.2-C of the code, and less parking than required under section 250-7.7-D of the code at 125 Panorama Creek Drive. Property is currently or formerly owned by 777 Panorama Properties LLC and is zoned limited industrial. SBL number 138.12-1-1.1, application number 19Z-0042.
There we go. Okay. So, good evening. My name is Peter Vars with BME Associates, appearing tonight on behalf of 777 Panorama Properties. As it was read by Mr. Sevegas, we are here this evening to continue the public hearing process for 2 variances that have been requested for the construction of the first building within the Panorama Park Business Park. The 2 variances being, one, requesting a reduction in the buffer to the residential zone to the west property line, reducing it from 150 feet to a request of 100 feet. The second variance that was applied for was for a reduction in parking from the code required 225 spaces to 220 spaces that are proposed. As a follow-up to our appearance before this board back on September 19th, the applicant has been doing quite a few things as it relates to the review of this project. We've continued to meet with the planning board on the site plan review application, and actually that process has been completed. The planning board actually at their meeting last week authorized staff to proceed with approving a site plan approval resolution. So point being is we have completed the site plan review process with the planning board. Obviously there will be a condition in there regarding the outcome of the variance applications also. We've continued to meet with staff to address PRC, planning board, and the zoning board matters that have been raised and brought up during this application process, or the mutual or multiple application processes. But most importantly, what we've done in the past month as it relates to this board is we prepared and provided to you responses and exhibits concerning matters that were raised by the zoning board at the hearing on the 19th of September. We provided you materials on October 9th that were some exhibits that we'll go through this evening to the level of detail that the board wishes. And we also provided written responses to a summary memo that we were provided by staff that summarized what were the issues of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I believe there was a total of 7 of those items. So we did provide written responses to all 7 of those comments. I would, and we were, we were pretty thorough in our responses. I don't, and not going to read all of those responses. I would defer, Mr. Chairman, to you and your board as to how much detail you'd like to go in, but there is a couple of things I would like to address on from an overview. Because it came down to, I think, a few essential items that the comments, not only from the board, but we also were provided by staff a summary of the public comments from the hearing on the 19th. And we provided written responses to that document also that was provided to you. So I will just cover a few items. First of all, a couple of the comments, the first couple of comments out of the ZBA, what I'll call the ZBA memo, was with regards to the loading docks, their purpose, their need, and whatnot. As we stated in our response, excuse me, is the loading docks are a component of the building design. They are provided to serve the tenants. This building is designed as a flex space being the fact that this is going to be owned and operated, or owned and maintained by the applicant themselves. It's going to be space for lease. This is not being built to be sold and occupied by a third party. The applicant will own and maintain this. So the point being is there is the likelihood tenants will change over time. This applicant, 77 Panorama Properties, has been very successful managing millions of square feet of like space throughout the Monroe County, Greater Rochester region. His parks are home to some of the most well-known companies in the area. Paychex has created their corporate campus in one of their parks. Pictometry founded their business in one of their parks. Eagle Point Software. These are the types of tenants that they attract. But the point being is that the flex space has to be that. It has to be flexible to meet the ever-changing needs of tenants. The LI zone that this property is situated in fits the applicant's needs to that degree because of the allowed uses that are permitted within the LI zone. And that includes office space, but it also includes science and research space as defined by your code. And it allows light manufacturing and assembly. So it does allow flexibility. And thus, getting back to the loading dock, the buildings should be designed that way also. The loading docks are provided at the rear of the building. Yes, they are used by office users. Office users do like having loading docks because it removes that operation from the front of the house. It removes the operation from the day-to-day workforce, their reception areas. It keeps it into the back of the building. So that is why the tenant has proposed them. The loading docks are part of the building, and the building, as we've stated all along, is completely outside the 150-foot buffer to the residential zone. The second item that we want to talk about that has come up is with regards to what were your comments. I'm going to say numbers 3 and 4. And which was about the use itself, and I kind of alluded to that. At this point in time, the applicant is getting interest from office users, and that typically is their primary tenants that they do receive. But the main point is that the tenants they typically receive are professional office, professional businesses. And so it's with that the flex space is necessary. The next item, and probably one of the primary ones, and we'll get into some of the exhibits then, is why the variance is needed. And have we requested the minimum variance? Okay. We went to a lot of detail in our written response as to the process, and I'll just highlight that for you. Coming here this evening in October of 2019, is really, I think, about the 18th month that the applicant has spent planning and designing this project. And we don't mean that in the fact that it's been drawn out because of a slow process. It's more the fact that this has been methodically done. It started back in the spring of 2018 when the applicant assembled what were 4 independently owned properties and consolidated them into one piece. It took 4 underutilized properties that basically, each of them by their own, the way they were configured and separate from each other, were really of not very much value, but consolidating them into one and therefore be able to creating a unified vision as to how this 55 acres could be developed as one property created a great opportunity for the town. So back in the spring of 2018, the applicant went to the town board to discuss development options. There were discussions about rezoning the property, mixed use, things like that. At the end of the day, it was decided a business park was a permitted and allowed use, but also a good use for this area of the town of Penfield. And the applicant felt that they could be successful in doing this. But the point is this, is even then, it was talking about how to use the property. And one of the things to point out is this area right here, where the proposed road is and is under construction. There was a haul road there. It had been there for decades. Emo Mueller built that road to get up to the top of the hill. So it was there. So basically the road corridor was already created, and the town board saw that and basically proceeded in the summer of 2018 to issue limited EPOD permits for grading and clearing to get the area opened up. Subsequently, in January, February 2019, the applicant then proceeded with the overall site plan, preliminary site plan application. Why that's important to this board is to address the question of, was there any anticipation for variances back in January or February? And I can tell you at that point, yes, there were. And bear with me, but a little history on that. The original application to the planning board on February 1st actually was proposed as a cluster subdivision application under Town Law Section 278. And one of the reliefs that the applicant requested was for a reduction in the residential buffer along the west property line, along the entire property, from 150 feet to 100 feet. And the reasoning for that was because the applicant, and this is the crux of this application, and we provided you these exhibits, was by reducing this buffer, it allowed the development to shift to the west to stay out of the steep slope, the woodlot, and the stream corridor EPOD areas. This site, out of 55 acres, has, I believe it's over 20 plus acres of EPODs on it. Okay, and they're all irregularly shaped, as you could see in the exhibits that were given to you. So therein in itself, it created some challenges. A challenge of achieving the right balance. The balance between developing the property per its allowed use, per its zoning, maintaining buffers to adjoining properties, but also being sensitive to the environmental EPODs on the property. So when that cluster subdivision application was made and that requested that reduction, it was saying, and the main reason was, it would allow us to stay out of these sloped EPODs here that were framed by the road corridor. However, during that initial review process, the planning board said, you know what, that's not for us. You should apply for a variance to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So in March, we did submit an application to the ZBA to request a blanket variance, for lack of a better term, to establish a 100-foot buffer along the west property line. Upon review we had our first planning board meeting and discussions with the PRC, it was said, we determined no, that wasn't the right way to go. The planning board was very vocal about this. They said, why would we recommend or even consider a blanket variance without knowing exactly what you're doing? Really, the best way to do this, to assure that the minimum variance is being requested, or the right variance is being requested, or even if a variance is needed, is do it on a site-specific basis, on a lot-by-lot basis. So that application was pulled. We proceeded with the planning board through the spring of 2019, such that in June of 2019, the planning board granted approval to an overall preliminary site plan approval for the development to allow up to 350,000 square feet of flex space, office space, building space. One of the things I want to point out, because there's been a lot of discussion at the hearings as to, and one of the questions is definition of office space was one of the things. I want to make this, the application to the planning board states, the proposal is to develop the plus or minus 55.3 acre parcel as a professional business park with a mix of office, flex, and commercial space. Point being is the applicant has represented that since the application was made, that there was a variety of uses being considered for this property because that is what the LI zone allowed for.
And I'm sorry, Peter, to interrupt you. That includes industrial, manufacturing, light manufacturing,
Yes,
whatever's
basically
allowed.
what was allowed under the LI code.
Just the words that you use, though, commercial and
Yes.
whatever else you said. Okay.
Right. Yeah, the intent is of this applicant is to comply,
With
or is
permitted
allowed
use.
uses, permitted uses under the LI code, exactly.
Okay.
So when the planning board issued their approval in June of 2019, it was for up to 350,000 square feet of space, and they also issued their seeker negative declaration. They completed a coordinated review. Why that negative declaration is important is because that seeker review addressed traffic, it addressed noise, it addressed drainage, it addressed visuals, it addressed landscaping, it addressed the EPOD disturbances. Point being, a lot of the issues that have been raised were completely vetted and addressed through the planning board process. But as we therefore now move forward with our first building and application that we submitted and started our appearances before the planning board back in September, the planning board did their job, which was, okay, as set forth, and I'm not going to read it to you, if you pull the June planning board overall approval resolution, it says we're doing this, but understand when you come back for individual, we want to see individual site plans. You're going to address specific grading needs, specific clearing needs, specific landscaping needs on that site-by-site basis. That is what we're doing at this time, and that's what we did with them, so that now that the applicant says, okay, I've got an overall approval, I know where my baseline infrastructure is going, now I can start laying out buildings. This first building, couple things I want to point out why we're starting where we're starting, because there's been that discussion. And if you look at both these exhibits, as you come up the hill, this area, basically what we did, we started at this point and moved this way with the development. This area here is occupied by EPODs, slope EPODs and a stream EPOD. And it was very important to the planning board, the town board, staff, the applicant, was to not disturb the stream EPOD for sure, okay? And then this slope EPOD represents a drop of plus or minus 80 feet. So it wasn't even practical to go there. So my point being is, so we started at that upper limit of the EPOD and then began our layout of the building. I'm going to jump over to this, because again, this is upper. So, Mike, if you would please, could you hand these out to the board? What I'm going to give you now, thank you, is a photo exhibit we prepared to understand what this property looks like. Your first sheet, the site plan, is a key that shows where the photos that follow were taken from, okay? And what's important here, photo 1 was taken basically what we call at the bottom of the hill before you start climbing up the road. But what's important there, if you look at that photo, what you see on the left side of that photo, that is the east side E-pod. This photo shows that that road's pretty much right where that Hall Road has been for decades. It shows how that road corridor was framed. As you can see, these steep slopes off to the east they're there. So the comments and questions we were asked is, well, can you just take this whole thing and shift it 50 feet to the east so that you stay out of the 150-foot buffer? Would require cutting into this slope that you see in picture 1, 50 feet into that. Photos 2 and 3 are taken now at the top of the hill at the northeast corner of the proposed lot. If you look photo 2 is looking east again. So again, that's that slope E-pod that's right there at the edge of the proposed road. So again, trying to shift 50 feet east is not practical as it relates to the disturbance of the E-pods. Yes, Mike, I'm sorry.
Can you show us on the other map, in each case, where the, well, no, that map, that one, either one's fine. Where you're starting from, the photo, and where you're looking to?
Sure, I'm sorry.
That would probably be easier.
So, okay, so photo 1 was taken right here.
Okay.
Okay, can you see where I'm pointing?
Right, looking at
Okay.
that.
Photos 2 and 3 were taken here. As I said, about the northeast corner of our development footprint. So what picture 3 shows, this shows where the grading, this grading here, that was permitted under the planning board's June approval, but it shows then the E-pod that's to the north. As you can see through that photo, it just drops off. So again, one of the things we've talked about is this is why we can't elongate the building either. Because if we elongate it this way, now we're moving stuff north and south, and we don't want to go north, and per our E-pod exhibit, we've got a slope E-pod to the south. We really had defined dimensions, north and south. This roadway, where it comes through, framed by our steep slope E-pod to the east, resulted in there being 425 feet between the road and this west property line. You take away 150 foot of residential buffer, now you're down to 275 to 300 feet of depth of lot to develop. Okay, now if you factor in emergency access, parking bays and access roads at 60 foot wide, stormwater management areas, all of a sudden that 300 feet is very constricting, that you can't really get a functional building in. Because the other part too, we've been in offices, we work in offices. The 100-foot building depth that's proposed is really the minimum where it's efficient inside the building, based on column spacing, office layouts, mechanical rooms, the loading areas are in the receiving areas in the back. 100 feet gets pretty small pretty fast in that depth. So pictures 2 and 3 show you that. Pictures 4 and 5 are taken here at the southern end. What the point of 4 and 5 do, 4 is you're standing at the road, you're looking to the west. So that is the view to the west. What's important there is that shows the existing vegetation that's there today and its effect on screening to the west. But what's important in that photo is that the very dark area there that you see, that's the grade change. Where you're standing there, the top of the hill is 30 feet above us. So that in and of itself provides an effective buffer to the residential neighborhood, the MHP zone to the west, to the proposed use, the proposed site. Picture 5 is again looking east, and it just again shows you that steep slope E-pod to the east that's framing us. We provide pictures 6 and 7. Those are taken at the back of the building here, or where that would be. Those are provided 2 reasons. 6 is looking due west to show you again what is going to be there between the site and the west property line. Again, that's a great picture that shows you the change in grade. Now, the encroachment we're requesting, or the reduction in the buffer, is to allow for the pavement areas. It's not for the building. So that 30-foot grade change will effectively screen the parking spaces that we have proposed along this west, what would be the west development line. Those are going to be hidden. The light poles, those light poles are 16 feet, so they're going to be below. They're LED lights, dark sky compliant, so they're a low emission light. So they're going to be below the sight line also. Picture 7, that's just a picture looking due north. That shows you kind of the pad graded out, but then again, you can see from that picture the perception of the vegetation that's going to stay all on this slope, because that's all E-pods, we're staying out of it. But more importantly, you get the sense of how that grade drops off from that building pad down to the project north property line. And then picture 8, we took at the end of the lot here. That picture was taken to just show the northern limits of the development, again to show the extent of the vegetation that's there. So why we prepared these photos was to show how the E-pods frame this lot, and getting to the point of the variance request, how we needed to balance everything. And we felt that requesting the reduction in the buffer from, I'm going to move this back, that requesting the reduction in the buffer here was the balance between staying out of the E-pods to the north, the south, and the east. And as you saw in the photos, those are some dramatic E-pods. No disrespect to our neighbors to the west, but that was where we could go and address, I'm going to go back to achieving the balance, because of the fact that the encroachment is the parking area. We can screen that. The 30 feet in difference screens it, the vegetation screens it. One last exhibit to walk through with you. This was in your package also. We did prepare a cross-sectional view from right along this line here. So we took it from this existing residence through their property, down the slope, and into the building. What this represents is a lot of things, and they're all dimensioned on that cross-section you were given. First of all, and this was one of the comments we had seen, the building itself, the closest home to the building, or the shortest distance, is 200 feet. Of that 200 feet, about 40 feet of it is on the residential side of the line. It is not treed, it is open. But then the vegetation starts, really, which is at the top of the hill, and then it starts dropping, and that's what the section shows. As we mentioned on this section, the residence is at an elevation of around 400. Our building's finished floor is 372. Building's proposed to the top of parapet wall to be 24 feet. So that puts it at 396. So it's 4 feet below, just right there. But more importantly, with the 200 feet separation, plus the existing vegetation, which is a minimum of 50 feet up in this corner, and as you can see on this photo, it gets deeper, will be retained and will help buffer the building, but most importantly, it buffers the actual encroachment itself. As part of the planning board review, 2 things occurred to even enhance this situation. First of all, the original plan, if you went back to the original application that was submitted for this building, there was no retaining wall proposed here. We actually proposed just to grade it out, and the planning board wanted a retaining wall put in to minimize the encroachment, because originally we were almost clearing to the property line in this corner.
Where does that go, Peter? I was going to just...
Sure. The retaining wall is right in this area here, like that. So right around the southwest corner, because what that did is it allowed us to keep this 50 feet, 45, 50 feet of existing vegetation in this corner to help screen it. And then the landscape plan, the second enhancement was a landscape plan that was designed in conjunction and reviewed by the planning board's landscape consultant to add additional plantings in the area we would be grading to fill in any gaps that would occur in the existing vegetation.
Otherwise, you would have had to go further to the west in order to get a slope?
Correct.
And
Correct, yes.
coming down.
Without the wall, the big thing that would have happened without the wall, yes, we could have graded it out, but by grading it out, we would have removed the vegetation, so it would have been opened up. So that's, the planning board recognized that, made that recommendation, and the applicant agreed to that. The other thing, as it says this section does, it does show very clearly, though, the sight lines from the residential area, the fact that how far they are above where the pavement would be and the building. The last thing I want to talk about, well, I don't know if it'll be the last thing. There's been a lot of comments. Why is this building 24 feet tall? Couple of things, and I don't, no disrespect. First of all, the allowed height within the district is 4 stories and 50 feet. This is a 24-foot tall, single-story building. But why 24 feet? First of all, that's measured to the top of the parapet wall of the building, and we've provided you with some updated architectural elevations. So that is not the interior ceiling height. That was one of the comments we had seen was, you know, why do you need 24-foot ceilings in the building? There won't be 24-foot ceilings in the building. Also, this building roof slopes front to back, east to west. So it's 24 feet tall at the front, 20 feet tall at the back, so it's actually a little bit lower. And like I said, that's to the parapet wall. But still, okay, so why 20 feet? So inside the building, how this is set, couple of things. Again, we're talking about an applicant, millions of square feet of space. They know what the market demands. Flex space is very desirable because you've got to be flexible in this business. It allows him to serve multiple different tenants as tenant needs change. Why that ceiling height is needed? It gets HVAC runs. It's IT infrastructure. It could be mezzanines for storage. It may need some high ceiling requirements for if there is R&D work, a tenant has an R&D use type thing. You know, we call it clean science or clean industrial use. But you know, so he wants to be flexible. This is a formula that has worked. And as I said, if you go into his parks in Henrietta and elsewhere, you see very successful businesses there. I'm just going to check my notes. Just the last 2 little tidbits of information. Most of this we did cover in our responses I want to touch on because I know your responsibility as the board. You know, when we made our original application, we did address the 5 factors for you, but I also understand we want to be sure that what we believe is the minimum variance required is that, you would understand that too. One of the questions was, well, how much additional clearing is this variance and this site plan application requiring? Because again, in June of 2019, when the planning board approved the overall preliminary site plan, that included infrastructure and grading, basically grading somewhat outside of the E-pods. And in doing that, that's why this area got graded out. That's what you see in the photos. That's been allowed by the planning board, permitted. And what this now specific site plan application is requesting is an additional 4/10 of an acre of clearing. It's less than 6% of the site. There's been a question about this building's too big for this lot. This building at 40,000 square feet on 6.7 acres represents 5,970 square feet per acre. It was acknowledged, and it's in the record during the overall preliminary review process, that a density of 350,000 square feet over 55.3 acres is a low-density development for a business park. Rule of thumb is 10,000 square feet per acre. This project was approved at 350 on 55.3 at 6,330, 6,330. Now, point being, even this is less than what was a ratio that was initially established with the overall site plan approval. So this isn't an intense use. 6.7 acres for 40,000 square feet. Additional 0.4 of an acre, so it's less than 6% of the lot area. Lot coverage on this property is 43.8%. The code in the LI district allows 65%. So again, this is not an overuse of this 6.7 acres within this project. I think the final thing is what's important to understand is we've designed this site plan in consultation with the applicant, and it was a site plan designed to balance the demands of a lot of different requirements. We had the desire to use the existing corridor that had been established over time. Why clear additionally into E-pods and whatnot if there's already been a road corridor established? We were very sensitive to the E-pods to the north, the east, and the south. We felt that the balance was, and again, with all respect to that residential neighborhood to the west, that encroaching into there was the better environmental solution than encroaching into the E-pods to the north, especially given the presence of the stream E-pod here, or going into that E-pod to the east, which, as you can see, is quite dynamic to the east, or to the E-pod to the south. So we took the environmental approach, I would say, of achieving that balance, because we felt, well, yes, it is an encroachment into the buffer, but we saw it as something we could mitigate, that we could address it, because the elevation and the vegetation screens it. That's why we were sensitive to keep the building out of there. The applicant would have preferred 120 feet deep on that building, to be honest with you. But that would have put the building over the line, and that's not where he wanted to go. So at the end of the day, what we believe is that we have requested a variance that is the minimum as it relates to the buffer, because we've tried to balance the needs of the environment and of the surrounding neighborhood. One other housekeeping item is there is a second variance before you, which is a reduction in parking. 225 is required by code if it's assumed to be a full office use, and that's how we've applied, because we basically have been conservative in that approach. This plan proposes 220. We're asking a request of 5 spaces. Could we get 5 more spaces on here? Yes, we could. Basically, we would just extend parking into the buffer, along this buffer line a little bit more, or possibly go to the planning board and ask for an E-pod permit. But the 220 is based on the applicant's experience. Again, not to reiterate, but their experience. He realizes if he parks 5.5 spaces per 1,000 gross floor area, that works for him with his tenants and with his leasing. I've got a lot more information I could go over with you, or would be prepared to, but I'm going to stop, and I would obviously entertain any questions that the board has to what I've said this evening or to any of the materials we've given you.
I wanted to clarify one thing. If you could have extended north and south the parking, because the E-pods were a little more, weren't as steep, and you could have put the building, would still be sitting, or could still be sitting in its present location without a variance.
Correct.
Because you could have moved the parking to the side instead of the back, and it would still have the building in that exact location, and it would meet code.
Correct. Because part of it, too, one of the things we didn't talk about, we were somewhat being sensitive, too, because of the grading, is we were getting the setback, or the building setback off this road, because this grade climbs all the way. So we had to make this a manageable grade. And part of it, too, we wanted to get the building off the road for a little bit. Actually, one thing I do want to point out, one of the things you are required to think about is does granting the variance create, how it affects the neighborhood that's affected by the variance request. One of the things we put in our letter that is important, because it was important both to the town board and the planning board. Currently, these residents use an ad hoc trail system to get from their neighborhood down to the commercial services and retail areas of Panorama. Actually, you probably even see some of them walking along 441 at times. But they do have an ad hoc trail system. The applicant has agreed to, the easements are in place, but there will be, first of all, this is going to be a dedicated road to the town of Penfield, and it will have a sidewalk on it. The developer will be constructing a sidewalk. And an easement is being provided from this sidewalk into this residential neighborhood to the west. So actually, we think we're actually going to help that neighborhood because we're actually going to give them a safe pedestrian route from their neighborhood down into the commercial areas of Panorama. So that's one thing we wanted to point out.
I'm not sure of the relevance of this, but I think it might be worth addressing. There was quite a bit of mention with the neighbors that if we allow variances for this particular project, that's going to increase the likelihood that there's going to be demands for further variances as you develop the other lots. Could you just address the logic behind that?
Yes. First of all, I'm not going to stand here and say we'll never be back, okay? Because I think what's important is I think the process has worked. Okay, going back to what I referenced, going back to February 1st of this year, of what we originally thought was the right way to do it. And the town, the staff and the planning board said, no, we're not going to do blanket. Let's do it specific so that we know what we're doing makes sense, not just cavalierly grant a variance. And it was never insinuated by anybody at the town hall that it's, oh, don't worry about getting a variance. Let's make sure it's the right thing. So to answer that question, does this set a precedence? I think it does, but in a different way. Because I think what it establishes the precedence for is what you have to go through to justify the need. I believe, obviously, representing the applicant, that we've laid out why the variance is the best solution for the development of this portion of the property, because of achieving the balance between all the different competing, I'm going to use the word interests, as it relates to what's occurring on this site. So the point is, once we get here, we're going to revisit it all over again. But part of that too, they may end up having a tenant that wants a different, maybe somebody says they want a different shape building. They may want a square building. They may want a trapezoidal building. I don't know. But that's what we do is, okay, what is the tenant or the buyer's needs? How does that fit in the site? Through the seeker process and the preliminary process, the planning board's identified sensitive areas to us to be aware of when it comes in. So I think we have set a precedent as to what we need to go through. One thing I point out, just because there was thought given to this. This neighborhood here has, and I'm sure has their concerns, but that was thought about also too with this design. As we talked about, this E-pod is here, and it's 150 feet, the residential buffer. This is the former Camp Hakamo site. Okay. We've located the stormwater pond in that area. That was two reasons. Obviously, the creek's here, all the water flows downhill, you got to put it there. But what that also does, that provides a permanent buffer. That pond in here has now established close to 200 feet of separation between anything that could occur here and these property lines. And that was done with thought in mind, from the planning board, the PRC, and the applicant. So again, this wasn't thought of on a whim, and I think the precedent that has been set is what the applicant's going to have to go through to think about it.
You'll have to justify each variance for each lot.
That is correct.
Okay, any questions from the board? Additional ones?
I don't think so.
All right. Good job. Thank you. Anybody in the audience care to speak about this?
Good evening. My name is Robert Marks. I'm an attorney with Boyle & Code, and I'm here today on behalf of the Allens Creek Homeowners Association. I'll try and keep my comments relatively brief. I expect that you'll be hearing from many people in regards to this application tonight. And I will also keep it focused on the 5 factors that we've discussed and take the opportunity to respond to some of the comments that were made today and in their responses to the zoning board's questions from earlier. First and foremost is the negative impact to the character of the neighborhood. I believe that tonight you're going to hear from a lot of residents as to what they believe the negative impact is to the character of their neighborhood. And frankly, they are people who experience this on a daily basis, and they are more likely than you or I to be able to testify or talk to you about what the negative impact of that of this variances will have to the character of this neighborhood. It is certainly, however, I will submit beyond dispute that reducing 50 feet of a buffer zone for light industrial functions, and the closer that they are to residential properties, will certainly have some negative impact towards the residential properties nearby. To address this argument, as you just heard, the applicant is attempting to minimize that impact by arguing that the building is only 150 feet from the residential property line, and by arguing that it's actually 200 feet from the mobile home parks and mobile homes that are present on the residential property. Those arguments, however, are meritless and are frankly irrelevant. The town code specifically states, and as this board is aware, that the buffer zone is from the zoning district line to the nearest improvement. So the fact that the building is 150 feet is of no moment, and frankly it actually hurts the applicant's argument, because a building would be less impactful on the residential properties than loading and parking, where the noise and the activities normally associated with the light industrial park would be ongoing and would be audible and visible to the residential property. Moreover, the fact that the mobile homes are 50 feet from the property should not help the applicant. How the residents of the mobile home property choose to use their property, how they choose to position their mobile homes, should not benefit the applicant in his request or their request for these variances. Moreover, talking about the elevation change, I think if the opposite were true, if the opposite situation were true, the applicant would have a stronger argument. And what I mean by that is, in this case, you have a light industrial zone building beneath a residential area. So in essence, and as the board talked about at the last meeting, the residential property owners will be looking down and be able to completely see the light industrial districts beneath them, including the extra 50 feet of buffer zone that has been reduced. If the opposite were true, the residential property owners would not necessarily be able to see above, or it would be easily screenable to the industrial district above them. So what we're talking about here is actually a building that is 25 feet tall, that there's light posts now that there's 16 feet tall, that the resident is going to be immediately viewing directly in front of them, because the elevation change, again, is where the residents are above the light industrial districts. As to the second factor, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method, I think this is the crux of the issue here that the applicant should face. And it's very tied into the self-created hardship factor, the fifth argument. As the applicant has to admit here, we're talking about 55 acres of undeveloped space. This is the first building. It is not the case that the applicant has come to you now with the final building of their plan, and we have built this all, and here we are now with these variances that we need to complete our plan. This is the first, and as you've basically heard today, they will be continuing to come back to ask for these variances. There certainly must be a way to create this business park, to create the benefit sought by the applicant in a way that does not require variances from the code, especially substantial ones that we're talking about today. The applicant submits that they have one alternative, that they could not move the building 50 feet to the east. But as the board actually already mentioned today, there's other alternatives. There is moving the parking to a different location, which, by the way, the parking and the improvements there is what actually is encroaching on the property. So the building could stay the same, and the parking could move and avoid the buffer issue. Further, there is no demonstration on the record as to why the building needs to be this size. If the building space was reduced if the footprint was reduced, there'd be no need for a variance. Again, we have 55 acres here of undeveloped space. This building, this particular building, does not need to go in this location, be this size, with a loading docks and a parking behind it. In terms of the substantial factor, I won't linger long on this. I believe that it is undoubtedly substantial. It is a 1/3 reduction of the buffer zone that we're talking about here. The applicant's position, obviously today, was that, well, it's not the entire west property line that we're asking for the 1/3 reduction to. But one, that focuses on the wrong thing. What we're really focusing on is how much of a reduction in the buffer, which is substantial, 1/3. And two, if they come back for the next building and request another 50-foot reduction in the west property line, then that argument is, again, meritless. As to whether or not the proposed area variance has an adverse impact on the environmental conditions, again, I will let the residents speak to the environmental impacts that they've already seen and that the variance will continue to cause if granted. And again, the fifth and final factor is the self-created. I think that that is the key here, is that there's no demonstration that this particular building, the benefit offered by it for flex space, needs to be in this location and at this size than anywhere else. And frankly, the applicant has already stated that they've received EPOD permits to clear and move property. So it is not impossible for them to do so again to avoid requesting variances. As to the precedent setting, I do want to address that briefly. I believe that there would be a precedent setting a bad result if the granting of this area variance. I don't believe that there is a benefit for showing a hardship because I don't think that they have demonstrated a hardship here. If they continue to come back and ask for variances, the board will certainly have, whether in the back of their mind or outwardly, considered the fact that they have granted a 50-foot barrier buffer reduction. In fact, in the applications you've heard today, it was discussed what the previous variances were for each property that had that issue. One last note as to the parking issue. Again, I think that most of the factors what I've talked about applies. Most importantly, the 55-acre self-created hardship. The applicant actually has admitted today that they could put that at other places, they just chose not to. I think that certainly should play into whether or not that specific variance should be granted. And again, what we've talked about here is that the applicant is sort of dodging the question as to whether or not this is an office space by calling it flex space. So this could very well be an industrial building, which would require a whole different parking standard that should be, at the very least, evaluated and considered by the board. I want to thank you for listening to me tonight and for your patience in listening to others who come up to the podium today. And obviously, I'm prepared to answer questions, but it may be worthwhile to hear from other residents first to complete the cycle of what we're going to talk about today.
It's up to you folks, but either way, we're going to take a little break.
Yeah.
So you want to hold off on questions until we hear from some other folks?
Sure.
Okay, we'll take about a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening.
We're rolling. Go ahead.
My name is Bill Jones. I've just presented you with petitions from over 170 residents of Allen's Creek Valley requesting that these variances be denied. I'd like to specifically talk about two things. The first one about the docks. I have a degree in architecture and have spent most of my professional career in office design. For 16 years, I was president of FM Technologies, one of the area's largest design and move management firms in the Rochester region. And in our best year, we did over 1 million square feet of office moves. Specifically, I would like to comment on the dock issue and explain how misleading the developer's answers are on this issue. To begin, I spent 4 hours this week driving around local office parks, specifically Linden Oaks, Clinton Crossings, Meridian Center, and Canal View, collecting facts. As we have mentioned numerous times, when we first met with the owner, he very clearly said his motto was Linden Oaks. So I'm just repeating what he told us. When BME, and the developer wants you to believe their proposed design is what they call typical and normally associated with office buildings, this is flatly not true. During the tour of these 4 office parks, I identified a total of 4 docks. 4 docks in all those buildings, dozens and dozens, millions of square feet, there was 4 loading docks. While they say loading docks are needed to bring in furniture, office supplies, and IT equipment, it's amazing that the tenants of these 4 office parks are able to operate day in and day out without loading docks. My company did hundreds of office moves and never had a problem with buildings without loading docks. What they should be saying is loading docks are typical and normally associated with industrial buildings, which is what they're building. Make no mistake about it, if you approve this variance, you are approving industrial buildings that may have some office tenants, but this is not going to be an office park.
Let me interrupt you for a second, though, but are you disputing that light industrial use is allowed here?
No, I'm talking about their position describing why they need docks, which ends up driving the setback variance.
Oh, okay, all right, but you understand that light industrial is a permitted use in this area?
I understand.
Okay.
But they're presenting arguments. They keep talking about office that needs docks.
Well, but he did mention today that light industrial was a permitted use here, and they're
Flex space. Which
yeah.
is a carbon-
I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure that we all know that's a permitted use.
Okay. They've gone to great length to emphasize they're putting in the rear of the building outside the sight of the tenants. What that means is they put them directly in the sight line of the residents behind them, okay? And you've also put the trucks in the parking next to them. And as I mentioned before, at the last meeting, sound is inversely directly proportional to the square of the distance. So when you've dropped it 50 feet, you're doubling the noise that you're going to be generating for these people. The developer says there's only going to be 1 tractor trailer per day. I would love to have them put that in writing, okay? Right now, we have the backup noise going probably 4 hours a day. If you look up the specs for backup truck noise, it's 100 decibels that can be heard for a mile, okay? That's what we hear all day long, okay? You know, 1 truck, that's fine, but they put in two docks. Very interesting, these docks are different than the drawings we got from the town through the FOIL request. Those drawings had 3 docks on them, just so you're aware, we get a little confused when we get different things. As members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, your first obligation should be to protect property values and the livability of the town's residents, not the profit of a developer who does not live here. I ask you as a tax-paying voting member of the Penfield community to reject both of these requests for variances. As an interesting side note, I did some additional research on Linden Oaks, and other than having their property rezoned at the inception of the project, they apparently were able to develop the total project without a single variance. So I think that's important. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the parking spaces. Chuck Lewis has a family emergency and can't be here. With 38 acres that they're disturbing, it makes absolutely no sense that they can't find 5 additional parking spots. The options available to the developer that do not require a variance are numerous, includes making the building slightly smaller. As our lawyers talked about, there's nothing magic, you know, other than economics. And their economics should not drive variances. Locate some parking on adjacent lot. It's very common that employees park a little bit further away so that the visitors or whatever can park closer. And if you turn down this variance for the parking, I'm sure magically they will have 5 more spots. So this is not some unbelievable hardship.
I think they said as much, didn't they? He said that they could reduce it 5 more if they really had to.
Then why grant them a variance?
I'm not saying we should. I'm
Very
just
simple.
saying that they admitted the same thing.
Yep. So thank you for your patience. I know some others want to talk.
I had one question for him.
Sure.
I have one question for you.
Yes.
If we took this entire layout and moved it, and could do that, 50 feet east, aren't you going to have virtually the same amount of noise with trucks going to and from and parking? I mean, does that 50 feet make that much of a difference?
Yes, technically. To answer your question
Well, I don't know
directly.
technically, to explain to me
No,
why.
no. I just gave you the math, okay? But I think a more important thing from a legal precedent moving downstream into the future, if there's a complaint without the variance noise that's created and you've preserved the 150 feet, the town's going to say, you know, they complied with the code. If you proactively reduce that variance, and then these neighbors go to court because the sound exceeds the code, which is audible 50 feet past the property line, okay? So the code, which is not really well worded, it could really generate some interesting, you know, legal problems. And by the fact that you've approved a variance that doubled the sound, makes it very awkward from a legal standpoint. I don't want to pretend to be a lawyer.
Right.
But it relates to your question, which is a very good one.
Thank you. Now, wouldn't you have the same issue if somebody sued? What would have happened if you complied with the 150-foot setback?
I do not know.
Well, I'm just saying, that's the question.
The zoning board's defense is they were within the code. You know, so by the fact that you allow them to double the sound proactively, knowing that that's what's going to happen, it creates a difficult situation.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Bud Knapp. I'm an architect, and I live at 90 Winding Creek Lane. And just a couple little things that I was not able to be here at the other meeting, so some of the things may be redundant. I think I question the location of the road. If in fact that was just a gravel road, are there utilities now in it and that location? And what is the issue with moving the road? Because if the road were moved, it would not only create a much more comfortable situation back here, but it would also give this opportunity if the road came just 20, 25 feet over in this direction, that whole thing could shift down and be parallel with the back property line or the back setback line, and none of this would occur. Now, we don't know what the buildings are going to be, and if they're showing two loading docks on the end, there must be something planned. And I would say that any building that's 4 feet off the ground in the back is probably planning to have a lot more industrial than office. So I wouldn't kid yourself about believing that there's going to be an office building, that this is just an office building. I think that the parking could be moved to either end. All this parking back here could be on the end easily, especially if the building turned. And also one other thing was that the hardship is clearly created by themselves. And I, being a designer, we usually do everything we can do to design around creating the owner a hardship that has to come before you. And now put you in the spot to have to make these decisions. When in fact, if with a little bit better design, they can in fact solve all these problems. This building would not have to be one continuous length. They could actually break it so that it kind of broke along the way. It would be more interesting, but it would also be able to bring the building back in conformance with the setback. So here's some of the things that I noticed, and thank you very much.
Well,
Good evening. My name is Alan Feldstein. I reside at 33 Hill Creek Road. This is the second hearing I've attended regarding this application, and frankly, I'm not in the least bit persuaded that this is not a self-created hardship. Here we have a development that's 55 acres, and on their very first application, they have to ask for a variance without establishing that either this location or another location in this park could be developed without the request for a variance. And yes, we are worried about precedent. We know that each case is decided on a case-by-case basis, but if we set the bar too low here, it's going to be hard to reject any future requests for variances, which we know will be forthcoming. If they can't do the first project without a variance, they're certainly going to be here for further variances. If this were the last remaining parcel for development on in this park, their arguments might have some validity. But with an entire 55 acres available for development, their argument just isn't persuasive. If we set the bar too low, there'll be future requests which will be hard to deny. The precedent that we'd like to set here tonight is that this developer should be required to comply with the ordinances which were intended to protect the interest of the citizens of Penfield. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't ask because I saw him coming up.
Thank you. My name is Bill Shea. I live at 65 Creekview Circle. I spoke to this group in February of this year, and I had with me pictures that I've been taking of the creek that runs along the western edge of this property starts up at 441 and runs down through the steep valley there and enters into Allen's Creek. It used to, when it got down about 75 feet from Allen's Creek, it used to split off and went into two tributaries. One of them on the western side then ran into a small pond area and then went into Allen's Creek. The one further to the east ran through the wetlands area, and then a little bit smaller, then that also went into Allen's Creek. I asked you at that time if you wanted to see the pictures and the rest of it. You said no. A couple days after that, I went to the office, the town office, and saw Zachary there. And I gave him the pictures and said that I have pictures showing that there is silt and sand and mud running into Allen's Creek out of this tributary. I had noticed it in like November of last year coming up, and it was a little bit lighter then. But then with some snow melts and with some heavy rains and the rest of it, it got dark brown and was running into the creek. Also at that February meeting, I mentioned to Peter that he had a problem over there and with silt running into the creek, and he told me that he would look into it. After that, I was away for a while, came back in May, saw that silt and mud and things were still rushing in. I took in more pictures, went up to the office again. There was nobody there but some young lady. I gave them to her, asked him to give the pictures again to Zachary. They were updated as of that date. Then in July, I took more pictures in June, and in July 17th, I went up to the office with updated pictures again. And I'd also been told by Zachary that they had weekly meetings out at the site with the contractor, with the developer, with the engineer and the town representative and the developer's engineer, and that they would look into it. At that time, when I was there in July, I spoke with Mark Valentine. I gave him the pictures. I said, look, there is nothing being done on this. I have gone up onto the Allens Creek property on the west side of this back in February. I looked down into that valley. I saw no protection along that creek whatsoever, and I saw nothing up on the hills, no protection to prevent any erosion. Well, after I went there on July 17th, magically, about a week later, there were silt fences down around on the western, northwestern corner where they happened to be digging a retention pond. And so there were silt fences finally put in around by the creek area, running next to the wetlands, and then running partially up the hill. I just don't understand what happened, where the switches were missed with the town or with Peter's firm making the developer protect our wetlands there and that creek area. And it started last fall when they got heavy equipment in there and started leveling hills and filling some of the valleys in. So for that reason, I oppose that reduction of a buffer. The buffer is for the benefit of the residents who live around the project or the property. It's not supposed to be for the benefit of the developer so they can put their parking in there. And so in my opinion, I don't think you should approve any variances for them until the issue of this silt and sand that has obviously clogged up the wetlands there because the one tributary hasn't run in the last 2.5, 3 months. And there is a sandbar now that runs along the south side of the creek between where that tributary came in. So thank you for your time, and I'm sorry it's getting so late for everybody.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Bob Sandholzer. I'm from Allens Creek Valley. I'm the president of the HOA board. I just wanted to challenge BME's response to the issue of visual impact of the building on the adjacent residential properties. I'm just amazed when I look down at this development and I see that the developer has clear-cut 20 acres of trees, no effort seemingly to protect any kind of vegetation, trees, even for the aesthetic value of his potential clients. I just don't get it. It's just one big mass of dirt. But more specifically to the variance, I went up there today to the manufactured home park, and I looked out, you know, you could see through the trees. I took a couple of pictures here. You can see from the backyard of the park that you can see the site there. There's no question that making a representation that that this is not going to be an issue for those people living there. And when those leaves fall from those trees, it's going to be so visible, and the simple fact is, and when you are 30 feet above a building, it will clearly be seen, even when the leaves are on the trees, as you can see there. So I'm just perplexed as to how they can make this representation about the visual and other factors about the location of this building being 50 feet closer to this residence community. So obviously I support the move that we not approve this variance. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hi, folks. Can you all hear me? I'm Andy Lippa. I live at 11 Hill Creek. I spoke to you guys at the last presentation. Thanks for listening to me at that time. I just want to say one thing. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And this picture is an illusion. This is not the way the area looks right now, okay? This presents a buffered development. It's not green now. The trees are gone. As Bob Sandholzer said, the trees are gone. And with this in mind, I noticed in the presentation earlier that one of the drawings called for trees to be planted by the developer. What kind of trees? What size trees? What caliper trees? Okay? To provide any type of screen that will help eliminate the way this has been denuded. This is a disgrace. This really is a disgrace. This is a muddy area, ugly. How it was left, or how it was let to be developed this way, befuddles me. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Marlene Shattuck, 59 Winding Creek Lane. I've been to all these meetings and I've spoken at each one. My story is still the same. It's very disheartening. Not so much noise today, interestingly. I don't know if the weather, but weather hasn't been an issue in the past. 2 days prior, 2 days, so Wednesday and Tuesday, it sounded like the Indy 500 with the trucks and everything running around and with their backup beepers going, driving me crazy. Driving down Panorama Trail, it's real easy to see that this property looks nothing like it did before all of this started. It looks like it's a war zone. All the trees are gone. And you talk about buffers being around the properties. I don't think there's going to be any substantial benefit from what has been left. And I'm sure that anyone in this room, or even the developer, would not want to live in a place that has changed so drastically in a couple months. So I just offer that up as heartfelt and how it has negatively impacted quite a few people. And I'm just sorry that this had to happen. My husband was the original founder of Camp Hakamo. We loved sitting on our deck in the summertime listening to the children who looked forward to summer camp. This isn't the fault of the developer because the camp was gone before they came in. I understand that. But it's just a very, very different place than what we signed up for. And now my husband is deceased for the last 2 years. And that's the only good thing about him not being here anymore, is he doesn't have to see and listen to the destruction that's gone on. Thank you for listening again.
Thank you. And anyone else?
Do you have a few pictures that were just given to me based on the environmental comments that were just made? I'm just going to hand them to the board.
Okay, thanks. Oh, okay, all right, then. So, yep. Thanks. Whoops. They, just for everyone's edification, they had to do with that silt issue. Thank you. Okay, nobody else? Peter?
Yes, I'm only going to, it's something new.
Really?
And yes,
Okay.
because I was not going to intend to put this into the presentation because I don't believe it's germane to the application before this board.
Okay.
But you've been given photos, there's been comments made about environmental impacts, damage.
Right.
Like, I believe the board may be aware of this, but in case I do want it on the record, because it's been entered into the record that there's, from the residents. Tuesday of this week, the New York State DEC was on site. They conducted a complete stormwater construction erosion control inspection. That inspection was conducted out of the DEC's Avon office. It was attended by representatives of the town of Penfield, to the town engineer and the assistant town engineer. It was attended by the applicant contractor and also by representatives of our office. The town will be receiving a letter. We were told it should be arriving next week. But in summary, and this can be verified with the town engineer's office, the DEC officer that conducted the inspection found the site to be in compliance with the New York State DEC's general permit for construction activity. And I will leave it at that.
Yep, there is, I'm looking at it here, a memo from town engineer to this board summarizing the visit and the conclusions of Mr. Scannell. Okay. And it does say a letter will be forthcoming. And anybody that wants a copy of that, I'm sure you'll be able to get one. Okay,
I have a couple questions.
sure.
Andy, have we received any noise complaints from the owners in the manufactured home park?
I personally haven't. I'm not aware of any.
Okay. And then I know you had asked Dan if the applicant would be meeting with the residents to discuss concerns. I just wondered if they'd ever met. I think that was discussed right at the end of the last public hearing.
Peter, I think that's being addressed to you or your clients or somebody.
You know,
Excuse me, may I just say one thing?
No, let him answer the question. We'll let you come up again.
Marie, just to add to that, there's also some allegations made that they've tried on a number of occasions to meet.
Well, I was just going to
and
add.
the developer has refused to meet.
I was just going to mention that, actually, but that was something that we had mentioned as a board, we had strongly suggested.
We met early on, John Lefroy's Builders. We met early on when this process originally started, the beginning of the process. We went to their homeowners association in the Allens Creek Valley, gave them contact information of us, of Dutch. I'm willing to still have conversations with all of them, but since last planning board meeting specifically, we have not met with them.
Well, that might be something to consider. Just happening to know that with the Highland Hospital construction, when they just did a lot of construction, there were 6 neighborhood meetings for that between the developer.
I'm on the foundation board of Highland Hospital.
I'm aware of that.
That's why she brought it up. Okay, sir, go ahead.
Yes, just one thing. That's very true, probably as of the date of the inspection a week ago. Everything was in compliance. I'm talking about the last year. And that's when the damage was done. And I think that the damage that's been done ought to be cleaned up and remediated.
Yeah, I don't know if
Maybe
you've
they looked
spoken
at
with
that.
this gentleman from DEC, but when you get a copy of it, call him if you like. There also is a statement in here that no remediation to Allens Creek is necessary.
Well,
that's what I'm reading. Okay.
Is there anyone here from the manufactured home park?
I have a question, how about meeting with them, rather than just us?
Andy, have we received any comments from any of those residents? Not necessarily even complaints, but just...
I'm not aware of any, no.
Okay, thank you.
start with, I'm shocked that the DEC is not, considers this compliant. That stream did not have any silt in it. Standard protocol when you start construction is you put up your silt fence. It did not get put up until the first week of August when all the damage was done. So I understand the letter. It's just unbelievable that if I threw anything into that creek, I know I'd be cited. In regards to the meetings, no disrespect, but to reference a meeting that we had a long time ago.
Let me interrupt you. Are you interested in meeting with them?
We have offered that at every meeting, and we have not gotten
Is that offer
one.
still open?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Thank
You
you.
guys ought to pick up the phone.
Yeah, we keep waiting, and now it's the 11th hour.
I hear you. I think we just made it clear what we would like to see, at least good faith efforts. Okay, anybody else? Even though I raised my voice a little bit, I'm welcoming the next person up if you like. All right, I have something to ask you. I'm going to come up here and ask. What could you do to simulate what this would look like for a site tour, if we wanted to go out and get a site tour? Oh, geez. So like, I guess what I'm thinking, with my little non-engineer, non-contractor mind is, can we get is it possible at this point to get like a truck there just to see what it would look like from up here and from up here?
Oh, in other words, get a truck here that's sitting.
Yeah, where if there were a truck using that dock or whatever.
I see what you're saying.
So we can get a view from up here, a view from here, or wherever else folks would let us take a visit to see. Now I know we can't put a building up there, but and something else to simulate a 24-foot.
Well, I was going to say, he could probably get a truck with the shovel.
Yeah, okay, that may serve both purposes. But if we could do that, I think it would be, I know it would be helpful to me. Anyway.
Okay. So
I'll tell you, you're going to kill me for not using the microphone, but I'm going to make a motion to table again because I think it's important for us to get out there as a group, if we can. I know everybody's calendar, but at least to see some sort. And we've done it before with balloons and such, and I've always found it to be helpful.
Okay, what I would propose then, we'll coordinate that through Andy. For your calendars. We'd like to do it sooner than later, partially with the weather.
Right.
And when we coordinate that through Andy, we'll put in there what we're going to suggest. Understand it's easy to park the truck there, but what we'll propose to do to simulate where the building is, so that we know what we're going to see.
It would be great if we could get some permission from some folks to, if they think there's a particular site that we should be standing to take a look.
I'd like to see
that would
it
be
high,
helpful as
because
well.
it's hard to find how to get there.
I can show you how to get.
Just talk with Andy. Talk with Andy after tonight, or
From the mobile home park, where I was standing with those pictures.
Okay, good.
Give you an idea of what it's like to look down.
Right.
Okay.
Awesome. So just pick the sunniest day between now and the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Specifically, what would would an off-road dump truck work? Just, I think, logistically trying to get it.
Yeah, I mean, look, whatever you can do would be good. Okay, well, thanks again. Another good meeting. We appreciate everybody's thoughts and concerns, and we will take a. Do we need a break?
Yeah.
No? Yeah, yes, we're going to we got a split decision there. We're going to take a 3-minute break and then gather in the back.
It was going to be a 6-minute break.
Wrong night when you pull up the agenda. All right, number 4, at long last, the Old Quarry Lane LLC application. First, in regard to seeker, I'm going to make a motion that we classify this as an unlisted action and that we further declare a negative declaration.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? No. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, now on the merits of the application, I am going to make a motion to approve it. I have to tell you, when we first received the material on this, and I took a look at it, I was kind of scratching my head a little bit. I don't know that we've ever had an application for a conditional use permit that had a lot of questions. And the applicants, or applicant, whatever, however way you want to look at it, to their credit, they moved it along a little bit, and I'm satisfied that we have enough specificity given to us tonight that we can conclude that this is a very good use for the property, and that they'll be good stewards, take care of it. Let's see, just in terms of conditions, no use that will in any way interfere with the operation of the Conservation League. The uses at this point would be limited to meetings and conferences, maybe some seminars, that sort of thing, in the building, with use of the land for research. There was some discussion of utilities, so I would make a condition that all utilities for the proposed use be verified in terms of sufficiency by the town engineer. And then we talked about limiting it to the, this approval is limited obviously to land owned by the operator. I don't know if that changes what you said before.
So you basically, so it's an application by the owners, which is this LLC, but you want to limit this, it's conditioned on the operator.
Well, let me tell you what my concern is, and you can tell me how we can do it. You know how we had some questions about that the Tates are going to retain some area, and God bless them, that's their property, they can use it the way they want. But in terms of the use permit that we're granting tonight, it's because a transfer is contemplated. Just want to make clear that my motion anyway is to grant that permission only to that land that is going to be owned by the operator, which is RIT.
Are we making the permit date as of when they acquire? Are we putting the time limit on it?
I'm fine with that.
I mean, it may take them 2 years to close.
Yeah, it might.
Take title.
It might.
Does that create any problems, Peter?
I think the code says that it becomes void if it's not commenced within a year.
See, that's what I thought. Well,
unless it's extended. And
Yeah,
I don't know
right.
if you extend those routinely or they got to come back to us. It doesn't, you know, if they're
really
working
a
through the
problem,
closing. But in any event, that's my motion.
I'll second it.
Do we have to put any conditions on it in terms of access to the water, recreational? We talked about canoes and kayaks coming down.
Well, so I think it's navigable waterway, so I think that.
That's what it falls under? Just as long as...
I believe so. So I don't think that they had any particular part of their application that pertained to the Manitou Lake itself or anything, I don't think.
Yeah, I just...
So what does that mean, though? That we don't have any control over that? That people are still going to be able to use it?
I don't think we
In
can,
essence?
I don't think we regulate the use of the, I think it's just a navigable water. They can, you
Okay.
can take your canoe down, I don't think it's restricted.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to check. Great.
All right, anything else? All right, so we have a motion to approve, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Who seconded?
I did.
Mike did. Good luck. Thank you.
You didn't vote for the seeker.
We didn't actually vote.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
did.
we all said aye?
Yep.
It's looking at that way.
So the Panorama, I'm going to make a motion to table for the site visit. Do we need any other reasons to table? Did we get enough info tonight and everything?
I think we did.
So, should we close the hearing then?
I'm sorry, which one are we on now?
Panorama.
We still need to do seeker, correct?
Well, I think we was talking about in advance of that, whether or not he wants to close the public hearing, but,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah. So is there any more, do you have enough information aside from a site visit?
I think so.
I think we did.
Yes.
Then you could close the public hearing, reserve, just, all you're gonna do is do a site visit where there won't be any discussion.
Yeah, yes, and I mean, there's always a possibility that the site visit will raise some questions where we want more information, but we reserve the right if we need to. But right now, the hearing will be closed, and I'll make a motion to table pending our site tour.
I'll second.
Okay, you guys have that? All right, so we have a motion to table and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Back to the top then?
We did not do seeker on
I was
that
just
one.
going to say, do you have to do seeker on the table?
No.
No, that's what I just said.
Nope.
Okay.
Seeker on one.
Montessori, make a seeker motion that this is an unlisted action, issue a negative declaration, no environmental impacts.
Second.
All right, motion on seeker to declare it unlisted and to issue a negative declaration, and we have a second. All those in favor? Aye.
I'm going to move to approve this. I can go through the standards, it's in harmony with, but we have a sign that was larger than this that was already approved. Basically, for a number of reasons, that's the best place for the sign. It's limited because of the drainage pipe and the sewer easement, also limited because of the pretty wide right-of-way. And I think it looks good in that location. It identifies the property. It's not going to look out of place. It actually isn't going to look too close to the road either. So for those reasons in general, I would approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the application and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
That also includes the size of the sign too, by the way. You know it's larger.
Yep. Number 2, beauty salon.
For a conditional use permit for seeker, I make a motion to declare this as a type 2 action requiring no further action.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
For the actual application itself, I make a motion to approve it. It's in harmony with the general purpose intent of the zoning district in which it's proposed. There's other salons. I think there's one across the street.
Across the street,
I think there might be 2 across the street.
Yep.
It's not detrimental to the adjacent properties, and it's not detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of persons residing or working within the neighborhood.
Yeah, plenty of room, park and all that stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like everybody gets along, and nothing's gonna be an issue.
All right, so we have a motion to approve. Did we get a second?
No.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 3.
For seeker, make a motion that this is a type 2 action requiring no further action.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, this is an area variance. It's going to essentially take the footprint of an existing deck. It seems, if there's any change in the footprint of the actual building when you take the deck into account, it's minimal. I'll make a motion to approve this. It doesn't sound like any of the neighbors have an issue with it. It looks like it's going to blend into the house. It's not going to be bigger than the house. It doesn't appear to be substantial, although it does. Actually, I said that, but it is 50% of the
available space.
But when you take into account where the deck is, it looks fine. It looks like it's going to be a fine use, and nobody has any real issues with it.
It's a pretty hidden parcel too for the size of it.
Yeah, and it's in general business too. It's not in a residential area, so I think there's a Delta Sonic in its backyard.
Yeah.
Second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? So a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, what are we down to? Simply crepes? All right, make a motion on seeker to declare this a type 2 action.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to approve. Some of these are substantial, more substantial than the others, certainly self-created, but we've seen this application now for 2 straight months, and I really haven't seen any indication at all that there's any impact on any neighboring properties. And I think they've gone to, in good faith, gone to great lengths to try to make the most of this property without really sort of destroying its look, just the opposite, in fact. So I think it's a good application, and for that reason, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, it'll be good to get that building filled.
Yeah.
Been there for a while. 7.
7, I would like to make a motion that this is a type 2 action with no significant adverse impacts to the environment.
No further action.
And no further action needed.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. I'd like some assistance with how to word this. What I would like to propose is that we allow him to leave the kitchen, outdoor kitchen where it is, but that the pergola, shelter, pavilion, whatever we want to call it, is removed.
The kitchen and the patio?
Yeah,
Shelter must be removed.
right.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all, largely because it's been there for 5 years.
Right. And I'm trying to be sensitive to,
But here's the only concern I have about it, and honestly, I wasn't even thinking of it until you guys raised it, is that, has the fire inspector gone out and looked at that, or if this had been done from the beginning, come in, ask for a permit, would the fire marshal be involved at all in that?
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, it's a kitchen. It's like, you can have a kitchen in your house. It's the same, gas supply and.
Okay.
There really aren't any.
Then fine.
Your house
Then
is set
fine.
back
Well, that's true.
from the lot.
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So how do I word it? Do I word it that we approve
Partly granted.
partly granted,
You're approving the variance for the patio and kitchen.
but denying the
Denying the
variance
shelter.
for the shelter? Okay. The rationale being that it is very costly to move the patio and the kitchen. And that that is not visible to the community. However, the shelter is, it's really not in harmony with the neighborhood or in character with it. It is self-created. It's a substantial variance. And I just think it's not going to be good if it stays.
Yeah, and I agree with all that, and I would say that, honestly, again, if he had come in before starting any construction and asked for this, I don't think it's close. I don't think it's a close call.
No, I'm just trying to be sensitive to the fact that I know it's going to be costly to move the kitchen patio.
Yeah.
But the shelter and the fact that it's not built yet, I think it should come down.
Okay, so we have a motion to grant in part and deny in part.
And I seconded that.
Mike seconded that. Any further discussion?
No.
You guys have all you need over there? Kind of an unusual vote, but you good with it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All right. I'm told that for next month, at this point, we have one application. So we'll see with the site tour. If we can do it early on a weekday morning, that would be best for me, and as much notice as possible would be good as well. All right. Anything else? All right, great job, folks. Yeah, make sure I sign those. You know what I need, honestly.
That's it.
Those little things that say sign here.
You can't miss it.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you for the confidence. Y'all, we're,
Close the public hearing.
no, oh, jeez. Just for the record, on every matter that we voted tonight on the merits, the public hearings have clearly been closed because of the action we took. I neglected to say that, but of course that's the case. Thank you. Yeah. You know what they say about old dogs?
I do.
All right. All right, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you very much.